Settle in, let your shoulders ease, and picture a horizon that wears winter like a crown. The light is low, blue with a hint of pearl, and the air is so clean it seems to ring when you breathe. Tonight we are traveling north into the quiet engineering of survival, the everyday brilliance of Inuit winter life, where homes rise from the very material of the season, snow, and a whole vocabulary of comfort is spoken in the language of wind. Ice, breath, and patience. We'll move gently. We'll remember that Inuit names many communities with their own words, tools, and traditions across vast distances. There is no single story here, only a constellation of closely related ones. We'll use igloo as most English speakers do for a snow house, while noting that igloo in Inuktitut can simply mean house, and that winter shelters could also be kamak, snow or skin hybrids, sod houses, and other forms adapted to place and season. Our goal is not spectacle. It's quiet admiration, how a lamp of seal oil, a knife cut through packed snow, and a doorway tunneled just so turn cold into kindness. Take a deep breath. Hear the soft hiss of a snow knife parting blocks. Feel the wind step back as a curved wall grows. Come in, one careful step at a time. At the top of the world, childhood is not postponed. It is folded into the household's weather. A snow house has room for lessons the way a lamp has room for heat, without fanfare. Children learn by being allowed to stand close while things that matter are done, by touching the day's tools with rules that feel like respect rather than scolding, by carrying small versions of big responsibilities until their bodies remember what their minds do not yet have words for. Play is the first uniform. A loop of line becomes a universe of string figures, fish, a sled trace, the aperture of a snow goggle, each shape rehearsing tension and sequence, the patience of holding one strand still while another slides. A child's panna, snow knife, is blunt but true. Shaving practice blocks into wedges that stack, fall, and, after a few tries, hold. A tiny ulu cuts thin strips of dried fish that really will go into the pot. A small bone needle draws two meat pieces together and, under an elder's thumb, makes a seam that will face weather tomorrow. Play here is not pretend. It is permission outdoors. The world thinks it is teaching weather. Children know it is teaching balance and reading. A heel tests the sastrugi, learning which ridges will carry weight and which will crumble politely. A toy commutic sled rides behind on a thong, collecting sticks and pride. It tips on pressure ice and is righted without complaint. A first day on bone skates is not about speed. It is about listening to the ice's vowels, the bright ring of safe hard cold, the dull mutter that means detour. In wind, a hood is pulled just so. A mitten cord is checked without being asked. These are not orders. They are reflexes that were taught by example the way lamp light teaches shadows to behave. Inside, apprenticeship sits next to the lamp. A keeper of flame shows the small wick comb move, the lift, the pinch, the tidy blue edge, and a child is trusted to try, the stone lamp positioned with a mote of clean snow around it, just in case. Another child fluffs grass insoles, learning the texture of right with fingertips. Not too coarse, not damp, not packed. A third child oils a boot seam with a single measured finger, seeing how the grain drinks, how the shine confirms. Around them, the room spells become obvious. Tools return to their exact places. Wet climbs high to dry, sharp lives in sheaths. The vent is never forgotten. Housekeeping is engineering spelled quietly. Elders teach with stories that have handles. Your namesake once walked to the door in a blow, counted steps, turned too soon, and learned how to listen to the drum's 3 beats between houses. The child smiles because the namesake is a person in the room. The lesson is a rope they can coil. Another story explains a nick on a parka, a careless hook in last year's spring. The fix done neatly. The promise that no one repeats that mistake because the mark remembers for everyone. Memory is not a museum. It is a kit. Dogs are part of school. A child learns to lift a paw like a cup, warm it with a glove, and free the ice bead that hurts between toes. Learns to clip a fan hitch line without tangling. Learns the meanings of ears, forward question, sideways listening, low uneasy, and tells a parent those meanings without words during a run. Pride inflates in proper measures. You saw that. You helped. The child sleeps later with a dog's small snore borrowed as a lullaby and wakes with the kind of confidence that does not need to be loud. Weathercraft arrives in child-sized units. A drift stick by the door has marks: knee, hip, shoulder. When it is to your mittens, stay near. When to your elbow, ask. When to your shoulder, you do not go. A polished ice window in the dome becomes a sky lesson, a halo that means snow later. High stippled clouds that mean steady cold, a sky so wide it has no edge that means stories and indoor work today. Children help manage indoor weather too, nudging the tunnel block, lifting the curtain, holding a palm near the vent and saying the new word enough. Meals are schooling without speeches. A child's bowl is warmed before soup enters. The spoon is held in mitten hands a moment so heat isn't stolen. A sliver of marrow becomes an exam in patience. Wait, taste, feel your chest warm. Dried berries saved in oil appear like small moons and are shared in a rhythm that says we are many without counting. A child who fed dogs first is served with a smile that means this is the right order. No one needs to say so, rituals are ladders of courage. Night's first hour leaves a tiny lamp bead burning for small eyes. A charm scratched on a block near the tunnel gets touched by each fingertip on storm nights. A whispered roll call, dogs, elders, tools, settles the house's breath. The game of who hears the wick first when it needs trimming turns worry into competence. When fear visits, the room answers with procedure, vent checked, flame corrected, a story told whose danger is entirely in the past. Children learn the difference between fear that helps and fear that lies. Mistakes are first drafts, not verdicts. A mitten left low steams. It is move high, the child copies the move. A joke is made of the mitten learning manners. A clumsy stitch is unpicked gently. Sinew resplit. The needle turned. The second pass praised for the smooth sound it makes through hide. On the ice, a misread patch earns a bruise and 3 crisp tips about how to see what you did not see. Then, immediately, a simpler path chosen together. So the last feeling in the body is success. Children carry news the village needs. Sent to an elder's door, ask how the cough slept. Take this warm bowl. Tell them the path by the rock is slick. Sent to a neighbor, bring the small all. Say the lamp burns well. Invite them to stories later. They return with information that hangs like tools. Ready, who needs help? Where the wind makes a trick at the bend. Which house's mittens need the high part of the rack this evening? Civic sense grows without slogans. Games stretch into tiny contests that never humiliate. A silent minute by the lamp, prize, first sip. A neatest coil race, prize, choosing the song. 3 perfect knots in a row, prize, carrying the drum a few steps. The humor is warm, never sharp. The stakes are practical, never heavy. Children learn that excellence here is quiet and communal. The room grows warmer from it.by spring. The year has written itself into small hands. A child ties the correct toggle without looking. Wipes a blade away from the body. Checks a dog's paw and hears good. Holds the vent open for 2 slow breaths and closes it. Trims a wick that smokes and beams when the flame goes blue. They step into wind and, with no speech, arrange their hood and face to make breath easy. They are not performing. They are belonging. At night, the igloo becomes a dormitory of proud, sleepy competence. Small tools are put back with the care of goodbyes. A child's parka lies furin to keep morning gentle. Mittens hang high, their cuffs open like flowers. The toy commutic leans where it will be the first thing a hand finds after breakfast. The drum rests. The lamp shrinks to a pearl. Outside, the world keeps its enormous weather. Inside, the future is being assembled in pieces that click into place with no sound at all. At high latitudes, a forecast is not a number. It's a conversation. The horizon speaks in colors and edges. Snow writes its grammar underfoot. Ice keeps a diary of sounds you can learn to read even with your eyes closed. Inuit weathercraft is not a trick. It's attention practiced until it feels like kinship. Habit carried in the body so decisions can stay small and early. Never large and late. The sky's quiet handwriting morning arrives in diluted pearl. And the first thing an experienced eye does is look for edges. A clean horizon, blue where sky meets level white, means honest cold, no mischief. A fuzzy merge tells you drift is on its way. Distance will shrink. A solar halo, a bright ring with faint dogs flanking the sun, means high, ice crystal cloud and often snow within a day. If the ring is fat and near, sooner. If thin and far, later. High stippled cloud, mackerel, predicts steady, dry cold that carry sound long. Voices travel camp to camp like birds. Low, fast cloud with torn bellies means the wind is impatient. The house gets a second look, lines are coiled tighter, errands shorten, night writes in stars and absence. When stars knife sharp above an igloo window don't twinkle, the air is still and ferocious. When they shiver, wind lurks aloft. The moon's halo earns a note and a glance at stores. Aurora that arranges itself into narrow, jerky ribbons suggests restless high air. Shoes wait nearer the door. Long twilight seasons demand nuance. You steer by the brightness gradient itself. A gift you only notice after 100 dusks, snow as a compass you can step on when sculptures snow into sastrugi. Hard, rippled drifts that line up with the prevailing wind. Their long axes point your travel. Their cross-chop warns of recent shifts. A commutiac runner hums when set true across small sastrugi, chatters rudely when fought. Powder that squeaks under boots is knife cold. Friction is up, breath needs shelter cloth. A crust that fails in one crisp snap under a single footstep promises new snow soon. A crust that collapses in soft sequence sighs hides trapped warmth and the kind of slope that can trick ankles and sleds. Even the way snow packs in a mitten tells the day's truth. Ball-bearing grains for gentle cold, sticky for marginal thaw that will refreeze into glass by evening. The ice's dictionary see ice speaks in vowels. A young skim taps hollow under a staff. Old ice answers with a baritone thrum. A lead hidden under a drift exhales frost fog, a low, moving veil that tells you where not to step and where, perhaps, to set a net under ice. Pressure ridges creak in a language of complaint when tide and wind argue. The time to skirt wide, not thread the needle. Near a river mouth, snow slumps strangely. The current eats from below. A safe crossing is noisy in a comforting way. Runners singing, cracks ticking dry. A dangerous one is quiet where it should ring, wet-breathed where it should be mute. Wind as a teacher wind has letters you can read on faces and fences. A child's lashes collecting rime on their outer corners say the air is too fast and too cold for long errands. A dog tucking its nose sooner than usual says the same. Drift lines stream off in predictable tales from rocks and caches. Arrows you can trust in whiteout to guide you house to house if you've prepared ropes and counts. On some coasts, an offshore breeze carries the kelp's perfume even in deep cold. It means clear air and hard snow. A sudden backshift, east to north, for example, can pin boats, stack ice, and make yesterday's safe path into today's trap. The room's weather inside the igloo, weathercraft keeps health steady. A vent opened a finger, then closed, teaches humidity to behave. Walls that glitter too much near the lamp need less flame. Walls that smolder mats of hoarfrost higher up need a breath of new air. The Kulik reports conditions. A clean blue edge on the flame means good air and tidy wick. A sullen yellow lip tells of soot, poor trim, or a room that asks for airing. Mittens drying too fast steam and later betray you. Drying by stages, cold well, then high rack, keeps leather and fur loyal, wayfinding in dullness when contrast dies and the world becomes flat milk, you switch to time navigation. 2 songs to the flag stick. Half a story to the cache. A tease time to the bend. Lifelines between houses have knots that face one way, so a glove can read direction. Drum and pot beats travel, marking a village map in sound. Dogs become compasses. Leaders favor the right line even when vision lies. You let their shoulders speak and answer with trust, not chatter, small tests. Often a staff taps the next 10 steps. A boot heel tests the next drift. A knife point presses a seam in the igloo's ceiling to see if melt has ideas you haven't noticed. Several times a day, you do the back-of-hand test at the door. Is air sneaking? You touch the tunnel's lip. Is rime thickening out of season? You watch the lamp bowl. Is oil too hungry? The wick burning impatiently? These microchecks are where the forecasts for a single room and the single lives inside it. Together, they prevent the kind of surprise that wastes food and temper animals as forecasters who don't overthink dogs' pace before pressure falls, then settle nose to tail earlier than usual, expect wind. Seals haul out on certain ledges when swell from a distant storm begins. That's a message for small craft to choose inside waters. Birds hug cliffs before snow. Ravens play in gusts that will later be serious. Caribou lift their snouts to a pass and hold them there in a united pose. A migration window is opening. None of these are omens. They are data with legs, decisions with modesty the best where the decisions sound like this. We went the long way. We left earlier. We waited 3 hours. We doubled the lashings. We camped. They are cheap choices made early that save expensive courage later. Pride has a role. It keeps you neat, but it does not steer. Elders tell stories that end with everyone home, not with applause, teaching the next reader's children get weathercraft in portions they can carry. A drift stick marked in mittens and elbows. A tiny weather board by the lamp with 2 symbols. Ring around the sun, vent sign. They report like proud forecasters. Halo, small. Vent, 2 fingers. They learn to tilt their faces just so in wind to keep breath warm. To lower a hood before sweat takes charge. To watch sastrugi as if they were lines on a map. Their reward is immediate. Comfort without scolding, miles without misery. The privilege of carrying a small errand alone between houses, after the guest proves right, or wrong, when a read pays off, white-oat avoided. Crack skirted, room kept dry. You bank the lesson quietly. A new stone on an inuksak. A note in a child's hearing. An extra not in the line where it helped. A story added to the evening that begins, today we. When a read fails, you repair early, tell the truth, and edit the mental map. Weathercraft is not pride. It's revision.I in the end. The sky stays itself. The gift is that people become themselves, calmer, earlier, kinder to fuel and to one another. A small lamp holds steady because someone watched its flame. A sled arrives in daylight because someone read the wind's handwriting on a drift. A house stays human because someone listened to frost and answered with a trimmed wick, a moved cup, a shorter chore. The world has its weather. The room does, too. Survival in the north is making sure the room's weather is always better. Light does not rush back. It tiptoes. A grey at the horizon learns a little yellow. Snow shadows develop edges. A child's face shows colour again after months of pearl and blue. Return of sun is not only beauty. It is logistics. The city under snow loosens its seams and becomes a caravan. Igloos that have been good rooms all winter ready to turn back into plain snow. Tools reporting for spring duty. Dogs shedding winter's thick politics and learning a new pace. Survival shifts from hoarding warmth to placing it where tomorrow will find it. The morning routine changes by degrees. The kulak wakes quicker, flame needing less encouragement. The vent's breath becomes friendlier. The room tolerates a small window of fresh air without sulking. Bedding is aired longer. Boots stand a step nearer the door as if curious. Lamp time becomes repair and pack time. Needles return to their wraps. Lashings checked and doubled where springs wet will try them. A roll of spare grass made for the first long day when feet will sweat again and need the old discipline of swapping dryness at rest stops. Breaking camp is not demolition. It is harvesting. Blocks are lifted inward, stacked to use for a last windbreak while sleds are loaded. The sleeping platform is shaved flat so melt will not insult the next traveller who takes shelter before the dome is gone. The tunnel's lip is cut clean and left as a small bench in case anyone needs a thinking place between miles. Inside, the lamp is thanked in the practical language of cleaning. Soot wiped, bowl polished, wick material bundled tight. The igloo's memory returns to snow with no debris to betray the house's good manners. Outside, the trail map changes letters. Snow that was drum-hard becomes a two-voice surface, crisp in early hours, then wet at the top and stubborn beneath. Runners receive a different kindness, fresh smoke glaze, a rub that makes them shed slush before slush learns to stick. Dogs read the change and shorten stride where crusts fail in soft size. Water appears as dark grammar, leads, creaks through drifts, a thin, reflective sheet on lake ice that will be glassed by dusk. Roots bend to high ground, to wind-scoured corridors, to the old wisdom of travelling early and resting while the sun teaches snow to forget its firmness. Caches open and accounting happens with spring's politeness. What's left goes forward, oil into smaller bags for travel. Dried meat portioned to make quick meals while camp is moving each day. A gift pulled aside for an elder down coast. What's spent becomes teaching, notes spoken into children's ears. This cache was too near the wind. The lid should have faced the low sun. This marker hid under the drift. Next year we set the stone taller. The ground around a cache is brushed clean of scraps. Foxes and springbirds will do their own arithmetic. You leave them nothing that would convert into bad habits. Hunting shifts with light. Seal holes remain faithful, but spring adds edges. Sun-glazed rims, wet that glitters, a patience game played with warmer hands. Nets under ice work while ice still carries. Then come river mouths awakening, a quiet geometry of stakes and lines set with the tide's consent. The ethics that have lived all winter keep living. Take what you can use. Mend what you used. Tell neighbors where the ice changed its mind. Birds return as messengers before they food. Lines of geese drafting notes across the sky that say the year is gathering itself for work. Clothing adjusts without swagger. Inner layers thin a breath. Hoods loosen a notch. Gut parkers come forward to meet spray and thaw, breathing while they keep everything correct. Boots keep the same rules with new urgency. Grass swapped more often, soles oiled against wet cold, heels checked for blisters born of the year's first long miles. Children think the sun means freedom. Elders teach that sun also means water, and that water, when young and thin, is trickier than ice that was honest about its hardness boats wake. Kajak skins are tested. Even a finger's nail might find a spot that winter decided to critique. It is mended before water can write its opinion. Umiak lashings are rinsed of their old salt and fed with fat. Frames are listened to with the ear that knows every rib's voice. Where ice still hems the shore, boats ride on sleds for the first lips of open water. Where leads lace the sea ice, a launch is a matter of inches and timing. Spring refuses to be one thing. People meet it with many small, coordinated truths. Dogs change coats and jobs. Sleigh miles shorten. Hauling becomes helping with moves. Poles for tents, skins roll tight. A child set atop a bundle like a captain on a small ship. Diet follows work, generous for shedding and the days in between efforts, warm and oily on wet afternoons when chill lies in ambush. Lines are repaired for summer's lighter hauling and coiled in new nests that remember canvas and fish rather than bare fat and snow. The team's map updates, who will lead for mud and water, who will relax by a tense door and warn when foxes consider mischief. Houses change skins. The last dome thins, a Carmack rises, snow wall at the bottom, skin roof above, or the Tupik goes up outright on tundra that finally forgot to be iron. Tense face wins good behavior rather than its jokes. Smoke flaps listen before deciding. The sod house, if it has kept winter, airs its ribs. Small windows glow like the inside of shells. Racks lift, casting shadows that look like staff lines for a new piece of music. Nets are mended with knots that remember last year's fish and promise this year's. Community widens with the path. Doors that were tunnel lids become flaps you can see from farther away. Visits lengthen. The law of the door stays exactly the same. Gifts still travel as chores. Help with a boat seam, a rack's first load shed, a bundle of dry grass just when someone's boots begin to learn bad habits. News becomes navigation again. The river cut through at the bend. An early pollinia here. Caribou prints told the pass. Spring speed can make pride go loud. Custom teaches it to stay modest so nothing important gets drowned. Inside, The lamp accepts its demotion with grace. It becomes a cook's partner more than a furnace man. Flame smaller, wick tidier, pot quicker. People rearrange the room's meteorology. Higher racks for a last run of drying. More ground-level space for bundles that will move tomorrow. A path to the door that remembers wet footprints and keeps them from teaching the sleeping platform any damp language. The house remains a still climate. Just at a lighter setting, children are given the first errands that cross seasons. Take this needle roll to the tent and bring back the paddle blade. Tell Auntie the cache is opened and ask where she wants this bag. Stand here and count when I test the ice. 100 heartbeats. They learn that spring's excitement is fuel, but fuel must be directed. They learn to balance on tussocks, to read rotten snow by color and feel, to step around a puddle that is barely a skin over a deeper, colder idea. Some foods that slept all winter are honored and used up with care. The last sour store is eaten with laughter at its stubborn perfume. The final stack of soup sheets is shared with a neighbor who fed dogs when a storm scolded too long. The pantry doesn't disappear. It turns into boats and lines, into a fresh ledger of favors and trades, into a lamp that does not fret if it rests a day. Even celebration is practical. A day is chosen when wind agrees and water lies honest. Drums come out. A small feast greets the sun not as a hero returning from war, but as a co-worker returning to shift. Jests about winter severity sand away pride's burrs. Praise goes to tools, to dogs, to the lampkeeper who never let the wick smoke for long. People walk down to water and listen to the new sound of the year. Drip, lap, creak, and let it edit their breathing. By the time the last igloo slumps to an elegant ruin and the first tent lifts like a held breath, the move is largely complete. Sleds lean where boats will soon sleep. The drum finds a summer rhythm. Children run in arcs instead of tunnels. The city under snow did not vanish. It changed rooms. What kept people warm in the dark? Order, courtesy, small exact work, keeps them safe in the bright. The sun returning is not permission to be careless. It is permission to redistribute care where care now belongs. Night comes later. The lamp is a dot. The room's walls are thinner or new. The air smells of wet earth, salt, and rope. Sleep feels different, but the rules are the same. Wick trimmed, tools put away, a last look at the sky through whatever window the season provides. Tomorrow the road will be water and mud and a little snow in north shade. The house, tent, carmack, sod room will breathe. People will breathe with it. The year has turned. The work has not. It has only changed shapes. In the north, the best proof of a good winter is how gently it disappears. A snow house serves, then bows and returns to weather. Tools leave only narrow signatures where they mattered. Paths that once stitched door to door go back to being wind's handwriting. Survival here isn't a fortress. It's a choreography that ends without footprints a few warm days later. What remains is portable, skill, stories, names of places, and a way of handling fire and cold that makes next winter look less like a threat and more like work you already know how to do. Unmaking begins as housekeeping with gratitude. Inside the igloo, the platform is shaved smooth so spring melt won't form pockets that trap scent and invite curious animals to puzzle at a dead house. The groove that guided drips all season is planed away. A child runs a mitten across the wall and feels no snag. The lamp stone is cleaned and wrapped. Wick fibers are bundled into a small skin that smells faintly of smoke and sea. A last handful of clean snow polisher's tools where fat would be fussy. When the tunnel is opened wide and light enters like a new language, no scrap remains that won't melt into the plain grammar of Thor outside. The village takes itself down without drama. Lifelines are recoiled, knots facing the same way for autumn's first white. A drift stick is pulled and set behind a rock where sun and animals won't chew it. Next year it will stand again and declare scale to mittens and elbows. The low wind wall, once a stubborn friend, is flattened into the ground's own slope so the sight sheds evenly. Dog lines lift like harp strings and coil asleep. The snow hook leaves a tidy scar the wind will heal in an hour. What looked like a city, the lamps, the soft windows, the paths, resolves back into landscape as if the houses had only been a conversation with winter, not a permanent opinion. Caches are closed or converted. If the route passes here again soon, the lid is reset with sharper edges and a stone mark that stands above the level where summer winds smooth everything. If not, the cache becomes a thank you, meat and fat distributed before they turn. A final bowl delivered to a neighbor. A scrap of hide tucked by a doorstep for a sewing kit that will never have too much. Nothing is abandoned. It is either carried or given. What travels is light and decisive. A family's inventory is not many. Lamp, knife, needles, sinew, panna, one fine igloo. Lines, toggles, spare grass, rolled skins, a child's first good tool, a drum that keeps the inner weather. Boats get their inspection rights. Sleds their spring condensing. Thongs that served all winter rewrapped into compact, obedient coils. Clothing thins but keeps its grammar. Dry near skin, smooth outside, air still in the middle. Dogs go from hauling to escorting and from escorting back to hauling as the year's road shifts under their paws. The ethic of leave no wound is older than paper rules. No hearthstones to scar ground. No nails to shine under moss for a century. No pits to break an ankle or a migration. Even midwinter's hurry leaves little. Cut blocks turned back inward. A sled runner's shallow signature across safe ice. A mended seam that will be seen again inside a tent. Children learn it without lectures. We were here, said by the smoothness of a wall, the absence of litter, the way a path is brushed flat with a boot before the last look back. Pride lives in tidiness more than monuments. Memory replaces infrastructure. Place names hold their maps and minutes. Inuksut keeps sightlines but never beg attention. Stories store hazards in friendly forms. At the place where the river hesitates. Tie the sled twice. When the two hills look like a sleeping dog. Listen for tide under ice. The city under snow returns every winter because its foundations are these. Habits that can be rebuilt in a day. Relationships that can be rekindled in an evening. Tools that are intimate and loyal enough to turn a drift or a hide into shelter and warmth on short notice. Spring spreads mercy and mischief alike. Meltwater writes new paths and forgets old ones. Glare ice sneaks onto trails that were gentle yesterday. The culture that spent all winter arranging a still climate indoors now arranges patience outdoors. Earlier starts, longer rests, more listening. The drum's pace lightens, and with it the house's mood, even when a house is now a tent or a sod room with a window the size of a hand. What has not changed is the temperature of manners. Dogs first on hard days. Modest talk in easy weather. Debt paid in chores and in bowls. Children are dressed with their names' full dignity that if wealth is counted, it's counted in competence. A household that can raise a dome before the wind makes its second joke. Trim a wick so clean the walls never learn to weep. Stitch a boot so no step asks for attention. Read a drift and a cloud without turning them into theatre. This is prosperity. The pantry is partly outside, partly in the body. The school is everywhere the lamp can shine. Law is a set of customs that save heat and pride at once. There is no single blaze that proves safety. There are 1,000 small correct acts that together are warmer than spectacle. When people leave, the land looks unbothered. A fox sniffs and finds only the general odor of winter. Fat once, now gone. Meat once, now stories. Dog once, now sleeping up the coast. A late traveller can pause in the flattened circle and feel something like a blessing. A shape that still holds gentler air for a minute, a groove that suggests where to sit and think. Then wind writes its impartial essay, and the place returns to itself. What endures, what really endures, is inside the travellers. The lamp tender's touch, that bone-pick confidence. The sled driver's rope sense. The sewer's sinew patience. The child's new habit of setting a mitten high without being asked. Under new roofs, over new routes, through wet spring and bright summer and the first sting of next autumn, these portable architectures keep building rooms wherever people stop. Skill is shelter. Courtesy is heat. Attention is food. Be why the time the first true night of next cold season stands up against the door and clears its throat, the city under snow will be ready to appear again. Not the same, exactly, nothing is, but identical where it matters. a tunnel that admits only the right amount of cold, a lamp trimmed to blue, a platform that lifts sleep into good air, a rack that makes wet turn obedient, neighbours treating doors like valves for warmth, no scar left, no fuss made, only a promise kept. When winter returns, people will be themselves again, quiet, precise, generous, and the season will have to admit it cannot conquer that. In the north, the calendar is not a grid. It's a circle of houses. Winter's igloo is one room in a larger dwelling that turns with animals, ice, and light. When the year is honest about cold, snow becomes a roof and a door. When the sky remembers blue without apology, skin lifts on poles and the wind is invited to behave like a guest. Between those, sod holds its steady line, a half-buried promise that breathes in slow seasons. Survival here is less about defying weather than about changing a dress with manners. In the hard middle months, the snow house speaks first. We've been inside it, lamp trimmed, tunnel low, sleeping bench carved above the cold well. Igloos spring up where sea ice travel and hunting make sense, near leads where seal breath writes punctuation into white pages, along routes where pressure ridges teach new geography every week. These are portable neighbourhoods, rebuilt when a map demands, repaired when a drift asks for a firmer hand, abandoned without injury when the season turns the page. A single night shelter can be a quick, low dome. A multi-week camp becomes a cluster, family houses. A working cave for tools, a small store for meat and oil. Paths that the wind helps to keep tided. As light stretches and travel shifts, Carmack take their turn, hybrid shelters of snow and skin or snow and sod, stitched by a logic of just enough. A snow wall and a roof of skins over a driftwood frame, or snow blocks for the lower course and a sealskin ceiling that glows like warm parchment when the lamp smiles beneath. The Carmack is a transitional grammar, warmer than a tent, quicker than a sod house, answering weeks rather than months. In shoulder seasons, when a hard storm can revisit while the first thaw is making promises, this compromise feels like wisdom. Summer asks for a tent you can read as easily as air. The Tupeke, skin tent stretched to poles and pegged into ground that briefly remembers softness, becomes the family sail on land. Sealskin, caribou skin, later canvas, whatever is honest under sun and rain. Edges are skirted with stones. Guys are set in comfortable angles. A smoke flap listens to wind. The tent's door is the horizon, mornings opening to water that speaks again, evenings closing to a soundscape where insects insist and waves applaud. Inside, bedding migrates to grass mats, the lamp shrinks to a cook fire or a tidy flame under a pot, and work shifts towards sewing lighter gear, mending nets. Watching children grow the animal knowledge they'll need when snow returns in some places and families. The sod house, semi-subterranean, roofed with driftwood ribs and turfs, holds the year's deeper rhythm. Thick walls, small windows of scraped intestine that lend a serene light, a low entrance that remembers the tunnel's courtesy. Such houses are memory-made architecture. They answer to long stays, to winters where mobility narrows, to households that gather generations under one low, protective roof. Around them the year spins, caches, racks, a boat drawn high, a dog line, a place to drag a seal where the ground slopes just so and blood runs cleanly downhill. In the sod house's company, the snow house feels like a travelling cousin. The tent, like a summer song you hum while you work. All these shelters share principles that do not change when materials do. Doors are small and clever. Sleeping places are lifted from drafts. Light is disciplined. Air has rules. The house, whatever its costume, keeps a still climate for people to be human in. It frames the day's work, accepts wet and turns it dry, teaches children which corner is for sharp things and which is for stories, keeps the dog from thinking the pot is a ballot. The more a family moves, the more these principles matter, because habit travels faster than freight. If you can build a house out of snow in a day, you can build a household out of rituals in an hour. Movement tracks animals and water. Seals ask for sea ice. Fish ask for river mouths and lake edges. Caribou ask for passes, crossings, and winds they like in their noses. People go where the food goes, and the house follows in forms that honor those places. A camp by a salmon creek looks different than one on a whale shore. A lake camp has its racks like flags and a boat pulled up on a gentle slope. A coastal summer has anchor stones for the umiak and a tent door that faces the gossip of the sea rather than its fists. The map is a collection of addresses recited to children until they can walk them in sleep. With movement comes logistics that feel like choreography. Poles and skins belong to summer's wagon and winter's sled. Snow knives live on sleds and in sodhouse corners. Lampstones ride wrapped in furs, too precious to trust to luck. Sewing kits walk in parka pockets because tears occur on the road, not in tidy moments. Caches are part of this dance, food planted where it will be needed later, tools left where spring will arrive, a bundle of driftwood pegged high against a rock so it won't wander when storms remember their strength. A family's footprint is a dotted line of competence, little marks across big spaces that say, "We were here, we planned, we will be back." Neighbors expand the house to village scale. In winter, igloos lean in toward one another like geese in a wind. In summer, tents edge a shared arc of shore where talk and fish lines cross amiably. News travels in bowls and in mended seams. Ice opened early behind the point. Caribou crossed at the old ford yesterday. Your boy's stitches are straight. Give him a harder patch next time. Law lives in these sentences, not just the formal law of a meeting, but the practical law of the door, open for need, closed against waste, polite to pride, firm with danger. A community that moves together is one long, braided house. The year's moods write their own furnishings. Spring carries sleds back to sheds and wakes boats. Summer lifts racks against the sky and spreads nets like handwriting on water. Autumn stands meet to wind and sorts skins by purpose. Winter stacks blocks and lays lamp wicks in rows. The work is seasonal, but the temper is constant, careful, generous, precise. You can read a family by its shoulder seasons. How quickly the Carmack went up when storms teased. How neatly the tent lines were coiled on the last bright day. Whether the sod roof nodded through rain without complaint. Such details are warmth in the bank. Children learn house shifting as play, building practice igloos that sag and then stand, pegging a toy tent that resists the day's first gust, digging a cache lid that fits because it is measured, not guessed. They learn to throw the first handful of snow on a new dome with a flourish that isn't vanity. It's a sign. The house is alive now. It will knit. They learn to pack a tent with edges out so the next pitch begins without snarls. They learn to sleep anywhere the lamp's grammar exists. Near, low, gentle trade and new tools arrive, and the year learns their names. Canvas tents hold rain differently than skin. Stoves heat differently than the kulak. Plywood changes weight and sound. But the old rules arbitrate. Does it keep a still climate? Can it be mended without ceremony? Will it travel without sulking? Does it fail politely, letting people step in with skill, not panic? The seasons accept what passes these tests and ignore what doesn't, because winter, especially, isn't impressed by novelties, only by competence. By the time the sun starts spending longer at the edges of the world, the circle of houses has turned again. The last igloo slumps back to sky. The sod house's doorway dries to its summer grin. The tent rises and hears insects speak in a language of persistence. The family moves through these changes not as tourists but as caretakers traveling from room to room in a larger home. A peg here, a block there, a seam checked, a cache lid smoothed, a door lifted and set just so. The year breathes, and the people breathe with it.in this way. Shelter becomes seasonal music. Snow's note is low and steady. Skins is bright and quick. Sod hums like an old drum. Together they score a life where warmth is not a miracle but a habit. Where the house changes clothes without changing character. Where movement is not insecurity but confidence that home is a practice, not an address. Night settles. A lamp, stone or iron, stove or fire, writes its calm circle on whatever wall the season provides. The same hands trim the flame. The same voices lower for sleep. The same rules keep breath easy. The roof may be snow, skin, or turf. The weather inside is always human. In the high latitudes, dinner begins with silence. The sea is underfoot, breathing through narrow mouths it keeps open in the ice. Igloo, seal holes, black punctuation marks on a white page. To hunt here is not to chase. It is to listen until an animal's breath and your own find the same sentence. The tools are simple and exact. A harpoon with a targling head that knows how to turn sideways under a hide. A line of plaited sinew or skin rope that will not sulk in a cold. A small snow blind, a low wall or a neat, domed shelter cut from blocks that persuades wind to pass by and your outline to vanish. Dogs wait back from the hole, curious and quiet, their steam rising in gentle columns that look like thought. Finding the right hole is reading, not luck. Old holes tell stories. Smooth, black, well-licked rims speak of faithful use. Ragged edges and snow sags warn of abandonment. A staff tests, the ear listens. A gloved finger touches the rim where ice tries to grow back and is polished away by air. The line of crack and ridge in the distance suggests a corridor of current beneath. A path a seal is likely to travel. You choose one hole, maybe two, never more than you can attend with real attention. The little house of snow goes up quickly, a windbreak, a shelter for patience, a room in which the hunter and the ice can keep a quiet appointment. Inside the blind, the world shrinks to manageable sizes. The harpoon balances across the knees. The line coils with the memory of the last smooth throw. The point is checked with the same care given to a needle before it meets tough hide. The hood is drawn just so. The mittens slide down to expose fingers for a moment, then return before the cold can argue. The hole becomes a mirror when a cloud passes and a mouth of midnight when the sun moves. In both moods, it is a door, and doors deserve respect. Time changes temperature here. Minutes lengthen into a steady, useful blankness in which the senses adjust their priorities. Ears hear through the ice, the small creak when a floe settles, the faint fizz where a crack widens a hair, the soft, fast whisper that only sometimes means what you hope it means. Hands learn the harpoon's weight so perfectly that a single extra drop of rime on the shaft feels like a word out of place. Breath is disciplined, sent low, under the scarf, so no cloud barters warmth for visibility. To hurry in such a room is to miss the very thing you came to find. When it happens, it is a punctuation mark, a puff. Small, intimate, a sound every hunter remembers the first time as if it were the first time they heard their own name. The arm moves without announcing its decision. The harpoon slides, not leaps. The line follows like a sentence finishing itself. The toggle, designed to be modest on entry and loyal once inside, turns and keeps hold. There is no wrestling drama. Only firmness, the line kept clear, the stance kept low. The hole widened just enough with a few quick strokes of the knife so that the animal can be brought cleanly, not bruised on ice. When the seal rises into the day, the moment is gratitude with work immediately nested inside it. Work means tidy use. The animal's warmth is respected and conserved. The cut is clean and quick. The mouth of the hole is kept decent so that blood does not invite wet into the snow where you will kneel again. Dogs are brought forward with the restraint that turns eagerness into help, not havoc. Their reward comes in order, not in a scramble. A length of intestine may be set aside for line or lamp wick. Hide is folded fat in so it does not learn bad habits on the ride home. Meat is packed for both near and far meals, fresh for the night stew and thin pieces for drying when the air consents. Oil is remembered like a bill paid, for lamp, for pan, for the 1,000 small illuminations that winter asks for. Nothing speaks louder of prosperity than a lamp trimmed with confidence. Not every day ends with meat. Some days end with stories of nemesis, a puff that came and went when the wind backed and told your scent to travel where it ought not. A crack that announced itself and made wisdom cancel the last hour's patience. A hole guarded faithfully that belonged, that day, to nobody. Even these days feed the house. They keep hands practiced, keep dogs honest, keep the ice map updated in the mind so that tomorrow's choice is kinder. The tiny blind, lifted and replaced, leaves almost nothing behind. The place remembers you as a good visitor. There are many ways, of course. Breathing hole weights are for deep cold. In milder swings of the year, netting under ice extends human reach with a geometry of holes and lines, a patient rectangle that fish fill and that hands lift. Spear and line at cracks ask for balance and the teamwork of friends who can each be a mooring for the other. Kayak and harpoon speak when water is open. Weirs and hooks when rivers reassert their speech. Each method shares the same ethic. Knowledge offered to weather, animals met as food and fuel and more, waste seen as an insult to the landscape that made the day possible. Etiquette runs deeper than technique. Elders and learners often share a blind. Instruction is given like wick trimming, small, frequent, kindly. Children are invited to listen to the whole so their ears learn the letter of breath and the false cousins that distract impatient hearts. Dogs are praised for calm refusal to lunge, for reading a lion's tautness and keeping it from a runner, for lying down when lying down is the bravest thing a body can do. When a hunt has been lucky, luck is not a boast. It is a meal walk to neighbouring doors. The law of the door in winter, hospitality, has a twin on the ice. The law of the whole, share what you learned. Do not foul what you used, and leave enough future to meet you next week, back at the igloo. The room rearranges for processing without waste. A clean snow bench becomes a table. A line near the dome, a drying place. The lamp, a clock that sets the pace for a stew that does not hurry and a pan that knows when to mind its temperature. Children learn the names of parts by touch. They learn that good knives are slow knives. They learn that fat is as precious as lean and that a spoonful of marrow can soften the hardest day's memory. The smell of the room shifts from stone and lamp to food and fur and gratitude. The cold stays where it belongs, outside the door, pressing but unable to intrude. Safety re-enters as an evening habit. Notes are spoken into the house, where the ice sounded thin, where a ridge grew taller, where a pollinia widened and sent up frost fog that will read as cloud from far away. Lines are dried and flaked with a discipline that means the next throw will not knot itself into an argument. The targling head is checked for any hint of bend, its lashing replaced if it even thinks of fraying. Tomorrow's competence is built in these unremarkable minutes. Some nights, the hunters tell the old stories that put today's work into a river that began before memory. Seals that once taught humans how to breathe properly. People who forgot to say thank you and watched their lamps fail. Animals who prefer dignity and reward neatness. Myths carry engineering inside them. They instruct gently. Be clean, be patient, be exact, be generous. In the lamplight, tools shine like punctuation marks, comma, period, dash. Outside, the sea continues its low lecture under ice. Inside, the house keeps its own weather and waits for sleep. Did I end this way? Food arrives without spectacle. It is small bravery practiced often, a choreography of knees and breath, of line and point, of waiting and finishing. The igloo is part of it, the lamp is part, the clothing is part, the dogs are part, the line of friends' doors is part. Together they make a city under snow where hunger is answered by patience, and where patience is warmed by a bowl that tastes of the day's precise kindness. When the bowl is emptied, the pick trims the wick. The story ends on a low note, and the room settles into the kind of silence that feels full rather than empty, the silence that says tomorrow has already been prepared for. In a land where noon can feel like a twilight that forgot to end, fire has to change its manners. Wood is rare. Driftwood, when it comes, is a windfall, not a plan. So the household flame in many Inuit homes was not a heap of logs, nor a crackling showpiece to gaze at from across a room. It was smaller, closer, and more articulate. The kullik, a shallow lamp of stone. Usually soapstone smooth as river talk, carefully fed with seal or whale oil. Its flame drawn along a crescent of wick like a row of tiny, patient tongues. The kullik is lamp, stove, and heater at once. An instrument tuned daily by hands that learned its music from elders and from winter itself. Set it in your mind, a half-moon dish. Lip low and even, the inside rubbed with fat until it gleams darkly. Along the rim lies the wick, dried moss, Arctic cotton, or other willing fibers teased and coaxed into a soft rope. The oil, rendered from a life taken at sea, sits like a calm lake within the stone. Capillary promise pulls it toward the wick, and with the smallest breath of flame the lamp answers, steady if the wick is trimmed properly, smoky and fussy if not. The person tending the kullik is part watchmaker, part weather reader. A bone or antler pick rests in the hand. With it, the wick is combed forward, the bright edge tamed, the soot scalded into good behavior. Every few minutes, a small, deft touch. This is not a forgettable fire. It asks for conversation and rewards attention with thrift, light first. The kulak draws a golden oval on the snow wall, soft as the inside of a shell. It is not a theatre. It is a working radius. Within it, sewing happens, uppers and soles brought together with caribou sinew thread that shrinks tight as it dries. Harpoon lines are inspected inch by inch. A child's parka seam is tested with a gentle tug and approved with a quiet nod. The lamp's light has a color that makes detail friendly. Warmer than moonlight, cooler than noon, perfect for the slow. Repetitive tasks that put households back together after the day has taken its small taxes. Then heat, not the roaring heat of a stack of wood, but a deep, continuous exhale. A single kulak can lift the igloo's air from biting to bearable, from bearable to kind, depending on its size and the wisdom of the room. It warms objects first, the stone of the lamp, the pot's belly, the snow platform under a sleeping fur, then the air. Heat rises, as heat insists on doing, but the dome's curve slows, spreads, and returns it. Surfaces soften by a degree or two. Edges lose their knife. Breath no longer scrapes. In a place where wind is winter's sharpest idea, the most important gift of the lamp is a still climate, a room without weather. But there is more than comfort in that small flame. There is food. A pot set over the wide lip, steadied on a snow pedestal or a small stand, receives meltwater or chipped ice and learns to steam. Finely sliced meat, thawed near the lamp earlier, slips in and turns the air savory. A cup, warmed by the lamp before it receives anything, becomes a gentler thing to hold in mittened hands. A kulak cannot boil oceans. It can shepherd a stew into readiness, turn fat supple, render sinew obedient, heat a needle before it meets frozen hide. The menu is measured by fuel and patience, and it tastes of both clean, honorable flavors that speak in complete sentences. All the while, the lamp is conducting moisture as carefully as heat. Snow houses are dry only if someone is minding the invisible river that wants to start whenever breath, food, and flame share a room. Too much vapor, and frost blooms thick on the walls, pretty for a moment, treacherous if it begins to drop snow from the ceiling in the night. Too little, and everything chaps and cracks, lips, hide, patience. The kulak helps hold the middle. Its flame dries wool and fur from within by gentle degrees. Its heat maps little currents that draw damp up toward the apex where a tiny vent lets it step out into the larger sky. The wick's trim matters here. A smoky wick wastes fuel and throws wetness. A clean, blue-edged flame is both thrifty and dry, listen for it, the small spit when a wick has drawn too much oil. The sibilant whisper when the pick draws the charred edge forward and the flame rights itself. The soft change in the room's acoustics when steam rises from the pot and meets the dome's curve. In a wooden house, fire speaks by crackle. In a snow house, it speaks by sibilance and by the way walls answer. Experienced hands can tell when the room wants a minute of fresh air before frost builds. The pick settles, a block is lifted a finger's breadth at the vent. A hand tests with the back, the better listener, and the lamp's climate remains civilized. A rack near the dome's shoulder often holds the day's damp gear. Not too close. Wet fur bullied by heat remembers its angulator. Hung high, the mittens and hoods dry by degrees, turning wind stiff into willing again. Below them, a groove carved into the wall tells any melt where to go, away from bedding, toward the cold well by the entrance. The lamp shapes a weather map inside, warmest by the ceiling, mild on the sleeping platform, a little cool where stores wait near the floor, frost honest near the tunnel. Every object has its latitude. Fuel is a ledger kept with seriousness. Oil is life transformed, and every drop has work to do. A spill is not a spill. It is a scarce season, a wasted landscape, a future hunger. So jars or skin bags sit where the lamp can drink from them with a minimum of handling. Wick material is combed and saved. The pick is kept clean. The stone is wiped as if it were a fine tool. Even the soot has uses. It can darken the underside of a cooking pot so it drinks heat more eagerly. It can mark a line on tools, a notation in the household's memory. Nothing in the Kulik's economy admits laziness. Its thrift is a kind of politeness towards sea and animal. The lamp shapes time as much as it shapes light. Morning, a small flame, just enough to ease fingers into sewing and to invite the first bowl of broth. Midday, flame lifted a fraction for tasks that need heat, softening sinew, rendering a little fat, drying gear. Evening, broader light for talk, for stories that everyone knows by heart but which grow new rooms when told again. Night, trimmed down, wick groomed, flame made low and steady as a sleeping breath. Between first sleep and second, someone wakes, listens to the room, and makes the tiniest adjustment. A ritual as intimate as turning a child's blanket without waking them. Safety is built into the design and the habits. The lamp sits on a seat cut into snow or a tray of flat stone so that heat has a polite distance from anything combustible. The wick's edge is kept low so the flame licks. It does not reach. The tunnel's cold well is a sentinel. Any heavy fume will slide down, not up. The vent, small, alive, attended, keeps air honest. Everyone in the house knows where the lamp is. The space around it is an understood no-tumble zone even in the cramped bustle of a winter evening. There are courtesies. The Kulik is often tended by the household's most skillful keeper of flame. In many places and times, this is a woman's domain, a sovereignty recognized quietly but completely. Guests respect the work by moving as the keeper asks, by not shadowing the flame while sewing is in a delicate pass, by waiting while the wick is perfected before handing across something that needs heat. Children are taught the lamp's grammar early, how to sit downwind of it, how to watch the flame's edge for news, how to carry a ladle of oil the way one carries a sleeping bird from time to time. The lamp teaches a lesson in just enough. A bigger flame does not always mean more comfort. It can mean wet walls, impatient fuel, and the kind of heat that argues with sleep. The best nights are the ones where the Kulik's presence is felt mainly by what does not happen. No coughing fits from dry air, no icy fingers fumbling belongings, no drama. The lamp does not perform. It accompanies. It holds a room in a temperature and a mood where endurance becomes ordinary life, where people can work, joke, teach, and drift into dreams without thinking about the weather. Pressing a hand to the house from the outside, around the lamp, food inherits that same wisdom. A sliver of fat added to the wick quiets it and repays the favor by becoming light. A pot of thin soup, fish, a little meat, herbs if the season remembered to leave some, warms slowly so it doesn't scald the tongue or the temper. Tea is a conversation, snow added, melted, added again, to be shared in small cups that make refills inevitable and sociable. A child's bowl is warmed before the food enters, preventing the shock that steals heat faster than any wind to tea day's end. The dome sugget stars. The lamp's glow pulls low. The ice window, if there is one, has gone to slate. The wick is combed for the last time, the pick laid beside the stone in its known place. The room's breath eases. Outside, cold keeps its intentions. Inside, the house has its own weather now, mild, predictable, human. People settle. Boots wait by the tunnel to harden and remember their shape. Mittens hang like sleepy birds. Sewing passes back into bags. A story finds its ending and folds itself away for later. The Kulik holds a small sun in a world that will not spare a large one. It is enough. The next morning, the same lamp will wake with the room. And the lessons begin again. A tiny flame that answers. A wick that has good manners. Walls that stay dry. Hands that grow clever within a circle of light no larger than a tabletop. In the far north, comfort is a discipline. The Kulik is its heart, quiet, tidy, intelligent flame. In the north, clothing isn't decoration. It's architecture you carry. An igloo can tame the wind for a night, but the day belongs to the horizon, and the horizon is a frank teacher. Inuit winter clothing answers with the most persuasive material the land offers. Caribou, whose fur is a field of tiny, hollow rooms, each hair a tube that traps still air the way a snowhouse does. The miracle scales up. Millions of hollow hairs become a coat that is lighter than you expect, warmer than you hoped, and friendly to breath and movement. You don't wear a wall. You wear a climate. The system begins close to the skin with dryness as the first rule. A soft inner layer, traditionally caribou fur turned inward so the fine underwool kisses the body, does two things at once: wicks and warms. Sweat is winter's sly thief. Any damp that lingers will steal heat for hours. So the inner parka drinks the smallest hint of moisture and spreads it thin. Over that, a second parka, often caribou again, this time fur out, becomes the weather face. Glossy guard hairs shrug snow like indifferent shoulders, and wind glances off before it has time to argue. The two parkas trap a layer of still air between them, what some elders might call the quiet room. The body warms it. The clothes keep it polite. Parkas are not a single answer for everyone. Women's cuts, men's cuts, and children's cuts carry clues to purpose. A longer tail for kneeling work on ice. A hood sized to swallow a small face without collapsing its breath. A breast or back pouch for a child carried warm against the heart. Sleeves are judged by how they behave with hands busy, long enough to meet mittens without opening a draft, flexible enough to accommodate a harpoon stroke, a snow knife sweep, the tying of a small knot under the lamp. Seams, stitched with sinew that shrinks to seal its own holes, are placed where they won't become gutters for melt or hooks for wind. Then trousers, again, 2 layers if the day says so. The inner, fur in. The outer, fur out. Thighs read the day's labor. Knees are patched and repatched where work turns fabric thin. A belt or thong sits where it won't pinch under a heavy parka, so breathing stays antidote, not struggle. At the ankles, clothing and boot agree on a treaty, overlap without lump. Enough give to kneel and rise without a permanent gap. Enough snugness to keep a gust from finding the shin's tender honesty boots, karmics, are poems in leather and thought. They begin with sealskin or caribou leg skin, each chosen for a temperament. One loves damp surfaces and resists soak, another insulates with a generosity that feels like kindness. Inside, a secret garden, dried grass, carefully gathered, cleaned, and fluffed, laid as insoles. Grass is a wick that never forgets its job. It pulls damp away from the foot and holds it in its own tiny rooms, keeping flesh calm. When the day's work is done, the grass is removed, shaken, fluffed, sometimes changed. A handful saved from summer meadows keeps winter's moods manageable. Socks, inner fur socks and outer fur socks, or a twist of woven wool where trade has visited, rotate through a drying ritual so that the foot never meets yesterday's chill. Hands were their own small houses. Mittens, fur in for the inner, fur out for the outer, favor warmth over dexterity because fingers together make their own weather. When detail work insists, a thin inner glove can briefly take the field while the mitten rests under the arm, sheltered and ready. A mitten cord crosses the shoulders so a gust can't claim a dropped piece. Children's cords are the longest lectures made gentle. You will lose things. We will plan for that. Palms, where tools kiss, get patches of sealskin turned grain out, a tough face to greet hafts and ropes to tee the edges, hoods, cuffs, hems, design turns intimate. Fur rims on hoods become little snow fences, slowing wind just enough that breath keeps its dignity and eyelashes don't braid themselves into small, cold cages. Cuffs are cut to turn back when a task needs a bare moment of precision, then roll down to rejoin the mitten without leaving a seam where snow can sit and learn bad ideas. Hems are rounded, avoiding corners that catch drifting powder. The amorti, a woman's parka with a built-in pouch for a child, embodies an entire culture of warmth in common, a hood that enlarges, a shape that balances a small life against the back. Vents and ties that let breath and heat move as bodies need. Clothing maintenance happens at the pace of lamplight and conversation. Boots are turned inside out and brushed with gentle heat. Seams are tested with a thumbnail. A tiny tear becomes tonight's project, not next week's problem. Sinew is split, softened, threaded, and pulled with a smooth, expert rhythm. Each stitch is a lock, each row of locks a promise. Edges are greased, seal oil or other fats worked into leather until it shines and remembers how to behave when ice courts it. Fur is combed, not scolded. A harsh hand breaks guard hairs, and broken guard hairs invite wet into the underwool, where wet never belongs. Good clothing grows softer and smarter over a season. Bad care makes even a fine hide sulk. Drying has a choreography that keeps the igloos where they're innocent. The high rack near the dome is a patient shelf. Mittens and hoods hung where warmth is gentle and constant. Boots stand near the cold well first, so ice crystals held in fibers relax without steaming. Then they graduate upward, closer to the lamp, for a final kindness. Nothing sits so close that it sweats. Sweating clothes is as foolish as sweating people in a house made of snow. The keeper of flame and fabric walks a loop. Check the lamp, touch the fur, lift a cuff, turn a sock, feel the wall's dryness with the back of the hand. A wardrobe is a weather system. It needs a forecaster. Swapping layers is a winter language. On the trail, the moment a gate grows strong and heat mounts, the parka unlatches a hand's width. Overheating is not bravery. It is tomorrow's chill waiting at the door. At the first sign of sweat, a pace eases, a hood lifts, a mitten is briefly doffed and held inside the parka to keep it obedient, then returned. Rest breaks invite the reverse. Parka cinched, hood drawn, body taught to hold the heat it just made. Children learn this dance by watching their elder zippers and ties. The small signals that say, now we close. Now we open. Now we are careful with our breath. Materials multiply through trade and adaptation. But the grammar remains. Keep air still in small places. Keep damp moving away from skin. Keep wind on speaking terms. Wool arrives. It becomes undersocks, liners, a hat under a hood. Cotton arrives. It is distrusted in deep cold because it remembers water too fondly and takes far too long to forget. Felt appears underfoot or at the wrist, where abrasion is rude. Canvas and nylon come later in stories and find their place as shells and sled bags, useful but never allowed to boss the sensibilities formed by fur and sinew. Garment geometry helps with chores. A parka's tail is long enough to fold beneath for sitting on ice. When you rise, the snow stays behind. A slanted pocket becomes a den for a knife warmed by the body so its steel does not bite skin with surprise. Thongs anchor a hood so wind cannot flip it backward like a bad joke. A breast flap closes with toggle logic, doable by feel, reversible with gloves on. The elegance is quiet. Nothing swings loose enough to catch, nothing tight enough to argue with breath. Children's clothes are redundancies disguised as love. Extra toggles. Longer cords. Double mittens. Names stitched where a cold hand can find them. Furs chosen from hides cut where the underwool is densest. Winter caribou, not summer. A child's first lessons in self-care are clothing lessons. Turn your socks. Shake your grass. Hang your mittens high. Never leave a hood where the lamp can persuade it into bad behavior. Success is a house that never needs to say, I told you so, because the mitten cord prevented the loss in the first place. From time to time, garments tell the story of a year. A sleeve patched with a darker piece of fur remembers a seal hole watch in late March, when elbows learn patience. A boot's toe polished smoother than the rest remembers the rhythm of a sled rope. A hood's rim replaced with wolf fur, smooth and frost-resistant, marks a season of good fortune and careful tanning. The eye reads these like chapters. The hand reads them like relief maps, thick here, thin there, attention needed soon on this seam. When sleep comes, clothes rest deliberately. The inner layers are kept warm, tucked near bodies or under covers, so morning doesn't begin with an argument against cold cloth. The outer layers stand where they can stay dry, a little apart from sleeping breath. A child's mittens are cupped in a parent's hood, a matryoshka of warmth. Night is when seams speak. If a thread is loosened, someone notes it, and morning inherits a task. The house's quiet breath keeps everything honest, dry where it should be, only gently cool where it must be. None of this is ceremony for its own sake. It is survival as housekeeping, repeated until it becomes culture. Caribou taught the first lessons. Elders refined them. Lamps and knives and racks enforce them. Instead of one big fire screaming against winter, there is a wardrobe of cleverness, clothes that make small. Unwavering climates around bodies, clothes kept friendly by nightly attention. clothes that change mood when the day asks. When the door lid is lifted and the tunnel spills its cold, people step out dressed as if the world were reasonable, because, dressed like this, it is. Winter redraws the map and makes a gentler kind of road, level, pale, persuasive. When the igloo sleeps behind and the horizon opens, travel becomes a conversation with ice, wind, and dogs who know the grammar of miles. The kommutiak, the sled, goes first in the mind. It is not nailed, it is lashed, cross pieces tied with sealskin thongs so the runners flex instead of splintering when the sea ice heaves. On the bottoms, a skin, a strip of ivory, or a glaze of frozen, smoked water makes a patient polish. The rope to the team is long enough to keep the sled safe when pressure ridges argue, short enough that the driver's voice can still touch the lead dog with meaning. Dogs are winter's colleagues. Each has a job stitched to its name. Steady-wheel dogs near the sled, eager leaders reading the land ahead, wise pacekeepers in the middle who prevent zeal from becoming error. Before leaving, paws are checked with a tenderness that admits no fuss, webbing trimmed, ice beads eased away, a dab of fat where the day's cold might bite. Lines are untwisted. Toggles click. The team leans into the first quiet pull. There is no trumpeted start. Movement is the ritual. The trail begins as advice and becomes a route. Snow remembers wind in its skin. Sastrugi, those hard, rippled ridges, run parallel to the prevailing breath of the world. Follow their grain, and the runners sing. Fight them, and they scold ankles and patience. The driver reads the broad strokes, the dogs the punctuation. Where the ice has pressed itself into a blue wall, the team seeks a low place. Where a new lead has opened, black water in a long, narrow thought, every voice sharpens. Leashes shorten. A probe taps. If the lead is young and thin, the day revises its plan with politeness. The cold has its own safety drills. Never sweat into helplessness. A parka opened a hand's width on the uphill. Cinched before stopping so the body does not spend hard-earned heat into still air. At rests, mittens are kept under the parka, warm and ready, not laid on the sled where the day will sneak them colder than you remember. Tea is poured in cups warmed first by the lamp's memory. A swallow too fast steals more warmth than it gives. Children learn these rules without speeches. They watch a hood drawn at the right second. A pace made a little slower before the valley's wind. A mitten cord looped twice around a wrist when ice begins to squeak underfoot like a question. Wayfinding lives in the sky and in the snow at once. The sun moves low, describing small arcs that the eye rewrites into a compass. On dull days the wind writes arrows on drifts, and long practice translates. At night, stars pull their old lines taut, north held by a patient star, east and west threaded by constellations whose names carry stories. But most travel happens in a kind of bright hush, noon that is almost twilight, twilight that lingers as if it forgot the door. In that light, the land offers quieter guides, a line of weathered hummocks that always mark a current below, a seam of old snow that hides a crack in its habit of never drifting, a scatter of frost fog where a pollinia breathes open water into air. The sled carries more than goods. It carries promises, spare lashings, a bone needle and sinew for emergencies, a seal oil lamp in a small box with tinder that has been dried into certainty. A roll of skins can become a windbreak or a sleeping place if the day decides to grow long. A child's cap rides where a hand can reach it. A dog's extra trace waits for the moment two dogs must pull as one. Travel is not betting on luck. It is packing competence in small, light forms. Camps are made without drama. Blocks cut in a quick spiral make a wall against the wind. No need for a full house when night's breath will be only a few hours long. The tunnel trick returns even in miniature. An entrance that dips, a sleeping place a little higher, a lamp that learns the room and keeps it kind. Dogs curl nose to tail in snowy nests. Their steam rises like a village of tiny chimneys. The sled, tipped on its side, becomes a fence the wind respects. No one wastes their breath on speeches about gratitude. They practice it. Fat trim for the lamp, gear dried just enough, lines coiled as if morning might need to begin quick. There are formal courtesies between travelers who meet on the ice. You slow before the other team reaches strain. You speak softly to their leaders, letting them know you are kind. You compare notes on snow that pretended to be strong and wasn't, on ridges that have shifted their minds, on a stretch where the wind backed and turned the world around. You do not count their bags with your eyes. You do not tell long stories when the day prefers short ones. If someone is missing a small thing you have two of, you make their day lighter and your sled more honest by the simplest of exchanges. Danger does not disappear even when all the rules are kept. Thin ice whispers under a drift. A pressure ridge hides a crevasse's young mouth. The answer is not bravado. It is rehearsal. Before a crossing, lines are shortened, teams staggered so no single failure becomes many. The driver walks with the probe, asking questions the dogs already suspect. If the ice complains in a low, wet voice, the route backs away, costs a little time, saves a great deal of warmth that would otherwise be spent in rescue. Every household collects stories where prudence turned a near mistake into a good evening. We went around. We camped early. We waited for the wind to change its letter. Food on the trail is made for steady morale. Dried meat softened in a cup. Fat shaved into it until the spoon finds gloss. A handful of snow melted and sipped slowly. Dogs eat first on the hardest days, because tomorrow they must pull with the same patience. Their bowls steam. Their eyes close into little moons of contentment. The camp's silence grows companionable. In such moments, cold feels like a distant behavior instead of a close intention. In all this, the igloo's lessons travel outward. Keep air still in small places. Direct moisture away from where sleep will be. Manage heat like a tiny economy. Give wind a path that does not cross your own. The sled is a house on runners. The team is a moving half. The driver is a lamp keeper with the horizon as their room. The map glides past, pressure ridges like frozen waves. Black water like a sentence you choose not to read today. Snow that carries your weight because you asked it the right way when the journey turns back toward home. The dogs quicken at a smell you cannot name, faint lamp smoke. A seam in the air that means human weather. The tunnel's shadow appears, and then the low door, and then the warm geometry of a room that remembers you. Harnesses are hung, paws are checked again, gear laid where it can dry without scalding the walls. A bowl steams. Someone says, "Later we'll tell the part about the ridge." Later. For now. The house breathes around you, and the trail you just learned folds itself into memory, ready to be read again when the map turns white. In a land where the world itself is a cold room, storage becomes a kind of gentle spell. The Inuit pantry is not just a shelf. It is a system that extends from the igloo's lamplit radius out across the snow, up into the wind, down into caches cut from ice and guarded by memory. Food here is not hoarded so much as managed, dried when air is honest, frozen when weather offers its steady hand, fermented when tradition asks for a deeper flavor and a longer life. The result is a winter larder that tastes of patience, of seasons arranged rather than defied. Drying is the first language many foods learn. Strips of fish or meat, sliced clean along the grain so air can stroll between the fibers, hang on racks that rise like stark musical staves against the sky when the cold is firm and the wind behaves. A day that the lamp would call brittle and blue is perfect for turning moisture into memory. The air does the labor. People do the arranging, spacing so no piece shadows another, height so dogs are tempted only philosophically, placement so drift snow becomes a flaw, not a thief. Smoke may lend a hand when insects wake in other seasons, but deep winter needs no curtain. Only time and a watchful eye. Freezing is the North's purest preservation. Meat, fish, berries gathered in kinder months, even cooked stews, thick with fat that will slice nicely when cold, are portioned and set to the great pantry outdoors. A cache is cut where the wind fails to linger and the sun forgets to pry. A box in the hard snow with blocks relayed as a lid. Or a pit in sea ice lined with clean slabs. Or a chamber inside a natural drift whose door faces the logic of the season rather than the view. Markers are memory, not signposts. Every family knows which teeth of rock line up with which notch in the land to make the place reappear under white. The fox may read your notes. The raven may try. The smart cache chooses modesty over advertisement, Fermenting is winter's slow poetry. In some traditions and places, meat and fat are set aside to change in darkness and time, igoonak among them, prepared with careful respect for method, season, and safety passed down in exact phrases. This is not improvisation. It is choreography rehearsed across generations. The right cut, the right wrapping, the right burying, the right waiting. When done well, it pays in profound calories and a flavor that tastes like the land remembering itself. When done carelessly, it earns its warnings. Elders keep the key and the clock. The North's larder is an archive. You do not misfile here. Inside the igloo, the workbenches of snow continue the pantry's quiet arithmetic. A shelf near the dome keeps thaw in the lamp's polite exhale. A colder niche near the tunnel holds the day's ration without inviting waste. A pot of soup becomes tomorrow's slices, poured into a shallow dish, set outside to freeze, then stacked like pages that can be read one at a time. Fat is rendered in small kindnesses, not in roaring sessions. A ladle set on the lamp's rim, a trickle added, a clean skim. Stored in a skin bag whose stopper knows how to keep air modestly outside. The sharing economy is the pantry's lock and key. A seal taken today is too much for one roof. A cache open tomorrow becomes many-door supper. Visits are measured in bowls, not boasts. A widow's lamp is kept in fuel by the quiet math of nephews and cousins. A young hunter who returns empty receives food with a story attached, advice folded into generosity so pride can swallow it without coughing. In such places, wealth is most visible in the direction of travel, out of the door as often as in. The body warms on food. The mind warms on fairness. Seasonal rhythm sets its metronome. Early winter leans on fresh meat, bright and forgiving. Midwinter leans on dried strips softened in broth, on fat that makes spoons shine and cheeks glow. Late winter opens the deeper archives, fermented stores, marrow coaxed again from bones already asked once, stews that balance thrift with cheer. Then spring's palate wakes, seal that has travelled through ice and light differently. Fish from under snow, and, when the year finally remembers colours, berries saved in their own juices or in oil. Shared as if they were laughter. Dogs' pantries are part of the same map. Their bowls are not afterthoughts. Their work is not an accessory. Sled dogs eat like tomorrow depends on them because it does. Their rations are a ledger of miles. Meat generous after a long haul, leaner on days of rest, fat added when the mercury punishes even breath. Their caches are elevated where a fox cannot doubt they are defended. Their share is measured first on the hardest days, a tactic that repays in miles like good interest on wise savings. Tools keep the pantry honest. The Igloo, the woman's crescent knife, moves like a moon over cutting boards of hard snow or flattened bone, its curve tuned to skin, meat, sinew. The panna, snow knife, cuts clean lids for caches, relays them tight so wind cannot think to visit. Hooks and toggles, pegs and poles, each has its one job, and all are stored where hands will find them by habit, not by search. Cords are coiled. Bags are labelled in a language of knots and placement. This to be eaten soon, this to be saved, this for the neighbour we owe quietly. Hygiene is the pantry's constant twin. Cleanliness here is not sparkle. It is insurance. Knives are wiped and warmed. Boards are scraped clear. Snow used to wash tools is carried outside so scent does not persuade visitors you did not invite. Hands wash in bowls warmed by the lamp. Not hot, not cold, just truthful. A house that smells of lamp and fur and stew is a good friend. A house that smells of negligence invites illness, and illness drafts fuel and time from accounts already lean. There is celebration in the larder, too, but it wears modest clothing. A first stew from a new catch gets a silent nod and a slightly larger ladle. A child's first competent slicing earns a story retold and a piece of dried meat tucked into a mitten later as if by accident. Feasts happen when the year insists, when weather pens people together, when a hunt's luck overflows a cache rim, when a drum speaks in the evening and feet remember patterns. Even then, the pantry's hand is visible. Meat arrives trimmed, fat placed where the lamp can see it, cooked portions measured so joy lasts through the day after. Teaching happens with every cut. Children learn the bias of a grain. the way a tendon asks to be followed, the temperature of a knife that should not touch lips, the difference between a smell that means good and a smell that means ask someone older. They learn the geography of caches and the code of discretion. No pointing in the snow. No marks a stranger could read. Only stones in the mind aligned with hills and old drift lines. They learn that a pantry is a memory with doors. You must be able to open the right one in a storm without fuss. Sometimes the pantry's wisdom is simply not to hurry. A cache can forgive a late return if its lid was cut right. Dried meat forgives many days as long as damp is kept honest. Fat forgives when it is decanted into clean bags with careful fingers. Haste shows up later as waste. So movements are even. Voices match them. The lamp sets the pace from the corner with its small, steady grammar. Light, heat, patience. In sum, the pantry under snow is a low, continuous miracle. No roaring hearth, no jangling stores of jars and tins, only columns of cold air treating food like a respectful guest, only racks turning moisture into shelf life, only caches keeping promises beneath their neat lids. And behind it all, a custom that says food moves through a house, not into it and out. When the lamp is trimmed for night and the stew has paid its warmth forward to hands and faces, the storage of the day is already a plan for the morning, a bowl set by the door for a caller, a bundle marked for the elder downwind, a slice saved for a child who will wake early and proud to help outside. The sky keeps its enormous pantry of stars. Inside, the igloo keeps its smaller one of meals and manners. Between them moves a quiet procession of dishes and thanks, of knives and cords, of dogs and mittens, of snow lids lifted and replaced. In that procession, winter becomes not an enemy but a manager you have learned to work with. Strict, yes, but fair if you keep good books. In the north, a sled is a plan. Dogs are the promise that the plan will keep. They are not ornaments to a winter story. They are its verbs: pull, wait, listen, go. Long before harnesses are lifted off their pegs, the work begins in quieter places, in how pups are greeted, in how older dogs retire with honor, in how lines are coiled so tomorrow looks simple. A team is made in the same spirit an igloo is made, piece by piece, with respect for curves and forces and the way wind and ice have their say. Puppies learn the grammar of calm before the grammar of gait. A hand under the chin, a steady palm on the flank. Voice low, vowels long. Food placed and lifted with predictability so appetite never turns feral. They walk among lines early, encouraged to step over and through without turning rope into a toy. A simple command, whoa, arrives like a lullaby many months before it will matter, and is rewarded every time the world stops all at once and nothing breaks. Leashes are held as if they were stories, not yanked, simply continued until the listener understands. Harnesses teach the next paragraphs. The fan hitch spreads lines from a central point so each dog feels the snow at its own angle. Useful on rough or broken ice where choosing your own clever line saves ankles. The tandem hitch strings dogs 2 by 2 along a central trace, a conversation from wheel dogs near the sled up to leaders who read the horizon. It is tidy and precise and suits long, even distances. Leather softens with fat and with the heat of working bodies. Webbing learns shoulders. A harness that pinches becomes a lie the dog must carry. A harness that fits is a truth both partner and driver can trust. Each fitting is an apology to the dog's old discomforts, an invitation to work without argument. Placement is character work. Leaders are attentive without vanity, curious without flightiness. They listen at the ear as much as at the paw. Point dogs just behind them take direction and steady it. Relay towers for intent. Team dogs in the middle are heart and lungs. They make the day's distance happen with the unpoetic power of repetition. Wheel dogs, closest to the sled, are the patient hips that hold weight and mind corners so runners do not mutiny. Dogs are rotated through positions as they grow wise. No one is left forever under a role that bores them or under a burden they cannot bear with grace. Commands a short weather in the mouth, clean sounds that carry in wind without snagging on vowels. Go. Whoa, gee, haw, easy. The driver's voice is seasoning, not sauce. Dogs feel meaning in rope and runner and the angle of the driver's stance. A slack line is praise. A snubbed line is caution. A tapped runner sings a note the team learns to read as attention. When danger visits suddenly, thin ice muttering under fresh snow. A lead opening like a dark sigh, silence is the safest word. The driver steps forward, touches the nearest shoulder, gathers eyes with the old commands. And the team slows as if the day itself pulled a mittened finger to its lips. Diet writes the team's steady arithmetic. Meat is the page. Fat is the ink. Water is the margin where sense lives. On heavy days, bowls glow with extra tallow. On rest days, they glow less but still speak of tomorrow. Frozen blocks are shaved and warmed with a little broth so belly and intestine greet their work kindly. Paws get their portion of care, too. After a long haul, each foot is lifted like a cup and examined. Ice beads are teased from between toes. A dab of fat rubbed into webbing returns flexibility the cold tried to steal. Dogs sleep heavy and curled, but they sleep inspected, checked for a nick that will become a limp, for a cough that will become a plan. Discipline is predictable, not angry. A lunge at the wrong time earns a firm, brief correction, and then oblivion. Grudges waste heat. Quarrels between teammates are understood as messages. Harness wrong, placement wrong, one dog carrying a secret pain. The driver watches ears. Forward means question. Back means worry. Sideways means I am listening to two things at once. Tails speak. 2. Though winter barbs them with rhyme. High and easy for joy. Low and willing for work. Tucked for cold or unease that asks for shelter rather than lectures. Rest has its rituals. On a hard day's halt, dogs are unclipped in order, praised in order, fed in order. The sameness keeps the team's map of fairness clean. They are staked or anchored where wind will not spend them. A low wall of snow is kicked up in a minute to persuade the world to pass by. Straw or boughs, when the country provides, lift them a palm's breadth above ice so sleep can be the medicine it is meant to be. In blizzard moods, a dog will make its own den, curling in snow with a wisdom older than speech. You check on the curl with a glove, feel breath, cover the hump with a little more kindness, and let sleep teach what lectures cannot. Tools orbit the team like moons. Snow hook, a talon of iron that bites snow hard enough to hold a resting sled, sits where the hand finds it blind. Snub line coils ready to marry sled to a post or to a willful bit of land. Brush bow on the sled's nose takes the day's knocks so the runners can keep their eloquent glide. Whip if present is signal, never punishment. A thread of air that points meaning the voice has already told. The driver's knife, a last resort for a tangle or for an emergency cut, is sharpened not for drama but for quick mercy if rope and circumstance ever conspire against a throat or a leg. Weather and dogs carry old treaties. On brittle, blue mornings, lines hum. Paws drum a hollow note that says the day will be fast and careful. On soft, falling snow afternoons, sound is swallowed. Pace is an interior conversation, dog to dog, driver to brake. On knife-wind nights, frost masks bank breath at the muzzle. Dogs learn to turn their heads sideways into gusts the way people do. The team reads Sastrugi as racers red road camber. They lengthen stride on the lee of ridges, shorten in cross-chop, step high through sugar snow that wants to keep feet as souvenirs. Where glare ice sprawls, the driver lets out lines so the team spread becomes balance. Where rubble ice heaves, the driver gathers lines so the team becomes a single, careful animal. Elders get their due. A dog who has led many winters learns a lighter harness and a shorter day. They teach from a second pair, showing a younger leader when to ignore an eager command and when to defy a drift that looks passable but sings wrong. Their bowls come first on nights when stories run long. Their names are said softer. Their paws are lifted with an extra hello. When they finally stay by the lamp, the team still turns its head at their old command, hearing a ghost voice held politely in muscle memory. Retirement isn't an ending. It is teaching with a warmer floor. The human half of the team is built the same way, durable habits, modest boasts. Lines are flaked as if tomorrow's safety depends on today's neatness because it does. Harnesses are hung where frost will not stiffen them into argument. Meat is portioned in the quiet before dawn so the reward arrives as if from the day itself, not from haste. The driver's parka carries a sewing kit and spare toggles because rope breaks at spectacularly inconvenient distances from home. A broken runner earns a sigh and then a lashing that turns problem to plan in 20 careful minutes. The team naps through it with the confidence of dogs who have seen this competence before. Villagers judge drivers by the look of their teams, coats sleeking with fat and care. Lines untangled even in the gossip knot of a busy yard. Dogs neither wild-eyed nor cowed. Children are invited to hold a lead for the quiet first steps of a day. They learn to plant heels, lean back, smile only after the sled listens. They learn the warmth that comes from being part of a connected thing, rope to harness to runner to brake to voice. They learn that speed is a gift, not a right. That stopping is a skill, not a failure. That a soft word works longer than a loud one. That a good team makes even hard miles feel like a conversation among friends sometimes. The finest traveling happens with no sled at all, just a person. On snow and a dog or two cutting a small figure across a large plan. The dog ranges and checks back, a metronome of trust. A ptarmigan lifts, a fox line crosses, a distant lead smokes with frost fog. The dog looks, decides nothing needs chasing today, returns to the old job. Keep company, keep witness, keep warmth moving. The world is larger than any map, but in that companionship it feels knowable again to day's end. The tunnel sighs and the house breathes warm. Harnesses steam near the vent. The snow hook leans like a satisfied tool. Dogs circle down one by one into the nests they like best. Bowls empty, paws tucked, dreams begin. The kind with flickering paws that remember gulls and wind and a long, clean line across safe ice. The driver trims the wick and, without thinking, counts heads by listening. The soft snores, the small whistles. Everything present. Everything ready to become tomorrow's miles. This is not romance. It is reciprocity. Dogs pull the sled. People pull the chores that make pulling possible. Dogs read the land. People read the dogs. Between them, a winter traveler appears, 8 or 10 bodies and one quiet voice. Writing careful lines over a blank country. Arriving at doors that open because teams like this have been arriving for as long as memory lives. In a land that offers few spares, repair is the truest kindness. Inside the snow house, beside the lamp's small sun, the workshop opens every evening. Tools laid out on a shelf of hard snow, a skin spread for shavings, a basket breathing the clean smell of sinew and fat. What's made here isn't ornament. It's the difference between a good day and a rescue. Between a warm night and a lesson you'd rather not learn twice. The panna, the snow knife, is the igloo's pen. Older blades were bone or ivory, later iron. All share a polite curve and a flexible honesty. The edge is tuned for snow, not wood, keen enough to plane a block into a perfect wedge, gentle enough that a misstroke won't gouge the dome skin. Every few nights, the blade meets a stone warmed in the lamp's breath. A thumb tests, not for shaving sharp, but for that satin bite that means the next seam will disappear when it's asked to. Handles are wrapped in hide so fingers don't learn metal's unfriendly temperature. Across from the panna sleeps the Igloo, the woman's crescent knife, half moon moving over meat, hide, sinew. Its curve lets the wrist stay low and strong while the edge walks forward. Its broad blade gathers chopped morsels as a bonus kindness. Inuit have stories in their rivets and tangs. Bone or antler handles polished by generations of hands, steel ground from traded saws, older stone ones still honored and sometimes used for soft tasks. The Igloo's edge is a family matter, kept sharp enough to respect food, never so reckless it bites hide in the wrong direction. Thread begins in the body's architecture. Sinew, the cords that held caribou together, becomes the cords that hold clothing together. Strips are dried and teased apart with a patience learned from wind. Each filament is moistened and twisted into thread that shrinks as it dries in its seam, sealing every needle hole like a little door swinging shut. A lump of tallow waits nearby to grease the thread and sweeten its passage. When a glove seam opens, the fix is quick. When a parka needs a new panel, the fix is ritual, pieces laid, edges trued, stitches set in ranks that will not argue with snow or with time. Harpoons are decision trees made wood, bone, and line. The shaft wants to be both straight and forgiving. Driftwood work true with knife and scraper until it springs back from a bend without sulking. The foreshaft, often bone or antler, takes the shock. A targling head, slim on the way in, sideways and loyal when it sets, waits on a line whose knots of reputations. The nuvik, the line hole in the head, is polished until even a hair wouldn't snag. Lashing is hide, cut fine. If it frays under a thumbnail, it is replaced tonight, not tomorrow. Nothing that meets water should carry a doubt. Lines themselves are a winter scripture. Plaited skin ropes are laid, not twisted, so they don't kink when cold makes other fibers stubborn. Every coil is flaked the same way, every time, so the hand can find the next loop in darkness or in weather that behaves like darkness. A short, sacrificial length at the harpoon's head takes the worst abrasion and can be swapped without unmaking the hole. A float, sealskin, airtight, joins by a toggle the fingers know even with mittens on. The float is not spectacle. It is a sentence ender. It tells the sea, this line returns. Bone and antler do many small, crucial jobs. Needles are carved slim, eyes polished like mirrors, points rounded just enough that they part fibers rather than cut them. Awls open paths through hide with minimal insult. Combs dress fur back to health after a day's hard wind. Little toggles and pegs keep hoods honest and pockets shut. Their shapes are friendly to fingers that can't spend long ungloved. If a tool can be made once and used a decade, it is. If it must be made twice each season, it is shaped to take that schedule without complaint. Leather learns good behavior by feeding and form. Sealskin that meets brine and freeze gets oil, rubbed until the grain shines. Caribou leg skin on boots gets a slower rub, because it already carries winter's kindness in its hollow hair. When boots dry, they're dried by degrees, cold well first, high rack later, so stiffness leaves without taking shape with it. A last, a foot form, lives on the shelf so karmics can be pulled back to their intended geometry before lines and snow ask them to remember it. Children apprentice with useful toys. A blunt panner to shave slivers from a practice block. A child-size ulu to slice thin, safe strips of dried meat. A loop of line to learn the toggle that will one day hold afloat to a moving world. They learn the smell of sinew when it's ready. The sound a good edge makes on soft wood. The feel of a knot seated right. Their first successful stitches go into something that matters, a mitten patch that will face weather tomorrow, so pride learns to live where it is most needed. Repair is a nightly liturgy. A sock's thin heel is caught before it opens its mouth. A dog's trace with a whitening spot of fibre is respliced while the team sleeps. A sled lashing abraded by glare ice is rewrapped with a glove's worth of warmth banked in the palm for the task. The best repairs are invisible by morning, but the mind remembers where they live and keeps an eye on them without fretting. The workshop is quiet not because there is nothing to say, but because the tools are saying it. Trade changes materials, not manners. Metal arrives, saw blade steel becomes knives. Files become gifts as precious as songs. Nylon line appears and earns a place where it proves it doesn't misbehave in cold. Canvas makes good sacks if you remember it drinks water greedily and must be defended from that habit. New things are welcome when they agree to the old rules. Don't fail loud, don't need coddling, don't ask more in upkeep than you return in miles. Safety threads through every choice. Blades live in sheaths. Awls point down into blocks. The lamp knows where sleeves end when hands lean in. The work area is kept tidy and stern. Nothing loose that could find the lamp, nothing wet that could find the wall. A child's path through the room is a small map with borders. Pass the lamp this way, not that. Pick up the bone, pick by its middle, never the sooty end. Put the needles back in their wrap with eyes all facing the same way so no one fumbles and learns pain. Order is warmer than chaos. By the time the wick is trimmed for sleep, the shelf has changed, edges trued, lines coiled, hides combed, seams mended. The room's light writes a sheen along sharpened iron and polished bone. Outside, the big workshop, wind and ice, keeps grinding its lessons. Inside, the small workshop answers with quiet competence. Tomorrow will ask for something, a block that must fit just so, a line that must not tangle, a knife that must not slip. The answer is already on the shelf, drying, cooling, finishing itself while the house breathes. This is the survival most people never notice, not the dramatic hunt, not the long dash over ice, but the evening's patient grammar. Make, mend, test, put away. Thank the tool by letting it rest clean. Teach the child by letting them help where it matters. When the lamp is lowered, nothing in the room carries a question mark. That is what comfort feels like at the top of the world. Not luxury, but the deep ease of knowing your things will behave when the weather does not. A snow house holds a small sun in stone, but what really keeps it warm is sound, quiet sound, deliberate sound, sound that knows its job. In the evenings, when the wind is working its arguments outside and the lamp has found its steady breath, a room becomes an instrument. Voices dull to wool, laughter trims its edge, mittens thump the wall softly after being shaken free of frost. This is not a silence that excludes. It's a listening climate, tuned by custom so everyone can share the same square of light and not spend heat in needless noise. Stories go first. Because stories are heat you can pass from hand to hand without losing any. The old tales arrive with snow on their shoulders, accounts of animals who taught people to be people, of hunters who forgot to say thank you and learned why thank you matters, of cleverness that saves, of boasting that drafts warmth out of a household faster than any door left open. The teller watches faces, a child's eyes bright, a tired hunter's posture easing, a grandmother's hand stilling on her stitching. A good story's work is practical. It sets the room's pace, slows breath, teaches the day how to fold itself into sleep without leftover corners. The drum speaks when the house wants a pulse. A single frame drum, skin stretched on a round, the handle gripped from behind, turns lamp light into rhythm. The beat is more felt than heard. Snow walls take the sound and hand it back smoothed, like stones tumbled in a river. Singing follows, but not in operatic flights. The songs, work songs, teasing songs, drum songs stitched from events into patterns, ride 2 or 3 notes the way a sled rides 2 runners. Words improvise around a center everyone knows. The drum is not an ornament. In a place where days can seem like a single page written pale, the drum reminds the body it has time inside it as well as outside. Children's games have the same calm engineering as tools. String figures drawn from a loop over small hands become birds. Fish, stars, or a trap, practice for thinking in knots and lines, for keeping tension even, for seeing a shape before it exists and then bringing it into being with a few exact moves. A bone and stick toy whirls on a thong, hums, and tests small wrists. A top carved from antler dancers and teaches balance. A little bow sends blunt reeds softly into fur pillows and then back into a basket. Nothing in these games is wasted. Motions rehearse useful skills. Laughter avoids sharp edges that would startle the lamp or the baby, names a warmth that lasts. A newborn may be given a namesake, a sonic, an honor linking the child to an elder, a relative, even someone recently gone. The name carries stories, yes, but also a way of being addressed, a network of respect that flows in 2 directions. People talk to a child as they would to the honored namesake. The child answers with dignity that is part imitation, part grace, part the plain fact that being addressed as a person helps you become one. In the small country of the Igloo, the name makes a climate. Phrases are gentler. Requests are shaped as invitations. Memory is kept close, not in books but in the face just across the lamp. Etiquette keeps the air clear. When a visitor lifts the tunnel's lid, no one stares at their bags. Someone says a simple greeting. A place is made near the edge of the sleeping platform so snow can fall from the hem and not trouble bedding. A bowl appears without fuss, warmed first so it gives heat and doesn't steal it, filled modestly so refills can happen and conversation can take the same rhythm. In many homes, the lamp tender, often a woman, keeps her small sovereignty. People move around her circle as if it were a hearth's crown, passing, offering, waiting while a wick is trimmed. Courtesy is not elaborate. It's consistent. Consistency is what fuel likes best. Work knots itself through the evening in quiet strands. A seam is finished. A harpoon lashing retied. A sled thong rewrapped. A needle stowed with its eye facing the same direction as its siblings so no one fumbles and learns the hard lesson again. Children help at the edges of competence. Hold this line. Feel this edge. Listen for this sound. So they fall asleep with useful shapes in their hands rather than with the canyon of the day's cold still echoing in their heads. The house's breath, the lamp's whisper, the small strokes of tools, together they make a lullaby. That does not require singing outside weather sometimes. Visits as light, aurora climbing the dome like slow green. Smoke, or as sound, ice booming far away. A deep iron note that makes the ribs answer. When that happens, the room pauses respectfully. Someone names the sound so no one has to be brave about not knowing. Someone mentions an old storm that did no harm, to set the scale. Someone trims the wick and everyone watches the flame return to its measured oval. Fear is handled like any other draft. Noticed, redirected, made to behave. On certain nights, the house widens into a village. Drums travel. Neighbors come. Songs trade verses like goods. There is comedy that does not humiliate, mimicry that corrects a friend's bad habits by making everyone laugh together. Jests are tools here, not to sharpen cruelty but to sand burrs. A hunter who takes unnecessary risks is sung about gently and, under the laughter, reminded that risk drafts food and fuel from everyone, not just from his pride. A child who bragged is praised for a real thing and teased for the boasting. So praise can bite and boasting can soften. The law of the door, the law that says warmth moves through houses, not just into them, extends to speech. Sleep arrives in two tides, with a small harbour between. First sleep goes deep under the furs. Then a stirring, a cup handed, a lamp adjusted, a story finished properly, a child recovered. Then second sleep, slower, thicker, with dreams that take their shapes from tools and dogs, ice and wind, names and hands. In that interval, caretaking is visible. Someone checks the vent. Someone taps a cuff that hung too low. Someone eases a baby from one shoulder to another so a parent can roll without waking more than dignity. The house has its chores even while people sleep. Morning finds last night's warmth folded into readiness. The drum sleeps. The stories wait at the edge of the tongue. Names are still on the air like spice. Threads lie coiled where a hand can find them even with night's cold still holding the finger stiff. The house's voice, softer by day, has done its work. Tempers are rounder, plans are clearer, fear has a smaller vocabulary. Outside, the white country is the same. Inside, the people are different, more coherent, more aligned. All this is survival as culture, not as emergency. The room makes a weather that turns endurance into habit and habit into ease. You can count calories and measure temperatures. You should, and they do. But warmth that lasts at the top of the world is also counted in drumbeats. In stories spoken just right. In names that let children sit among elders without shrinking. In jokes that fix mistakes without making enemies. When the door lifts and the tunnel gives back the cold, everyone goes out with an extra layer no parka can sew. A good mood shaped by customs, night returns. Snow falls in its particular grammar. Dogs turn 3 circles and settle. The lamp takes fire and becomes small sun again. The drum leans against the wall like a sleeping heart. Words begin, not loud, not many, but exactly enough. The house listens to its people. The people listen to the house. Between them, warmth grows in a way the wind cannot argue with. Cold has many clever disguises. It comes as wind with teeth, as light too bright, as wet that pretends to be harmless until it steals heat by degrees. In the snow house and on the ice, health is not an accident. It is a stack of small, steady habits, tools arranged where hands find them, air kept honest, food chosen because it mends as well as fills. Inuit winter medicine is practical, portable, and proven by use. Protection first, careful housekeeping next, quiet remedies last. Eyes get the first law, do not argue with light. On white days, when sky and ground conspire to become a single mirror, people wear snow goggles, narrow slits cut in driftwood, bone, or antler, sometimes soot darkened to tame glare. The slit lets detail through and keeps the white flood out. The frame sits comfortably, tied with thong or braided hair. Children learn to read the world through that calm line. Sastrugi ridges, a seal hole's tidy rim, a hint of fog over open water. If someone misjudges and snow blindness threatens, gritty ache, lashes tender, light is reduced indoors, cool cloths rest over closed eyes, work that needs sharp sight is traded away for a day. Eyes are treated like tools. Rest them before they fail loudly. Skin is next, especially the body's forward edges, cheeks, nose, fingers. The rule is prevention. Cover everything that does not need to be bare. Keep layers dry. Swap mittens before wet turns mean. If frost nip kisses a cheek pale or a fingertip waxy, warmth returns by contact, not flame. A bare palm on skin, a mitten held gently to a face, breath banked under a hood. Frostbite asks for stillness and patience. Thaw once, slowly, and protect. Never refreeze. The igloo offers many temperatures at once. The sleeping platform mild, the domed shoulder warm, the tunnel cold. People use that indoor weather map to re-warm injuries thoughtfully. The air inside the snow house is medicine when kept right. Lamps that burn cleanly, vents that open a finger's breadth and then close again, brief airing to clear damp. These prevent coughs that love crowded rooms. Bedding is aired whenever weather allows. Furs shaken outside, sleeping platforms scraped smooth so melt cannot learn bad habits. Hands are washed often, with snow first, then warm water when the lamp permits, and dried completely. A clean hand is warmer than a dirty one. A clean knife makes fewer stories that end badly. Breath is coached. On the trail, in through the nose, out through the mouth, under cloth. At night, sleep with the face turned from the vent's little stream so lips don't chap. Bolster a coffer a hand's width higher so lungs drain. Dry air argues with throats. The lamp's small pot adds a little steam when required. In illness, the house's routine softens. Chores quieted, lamp trimmed to kindness, food shifted toward broths that ask little of digestion but deliver much to spirit. Food is treatment as well as fuel. Fresh meat and organ foods, eaten raw or carefully warmed, carry what winter bodies need. Elders know which pieces make eyes see better, joints forgive work, skin remember its strength. Thin strips of dried fish softened in warm broth become a tonic. A spoon of rendered fat added to a bowl saves a shiver later. Sour, fermented stores are brought with respect. Prepared correctly, they are deep calories with lessons in them. Prepared poorly, they earn the caution elders repeat. Winter diets are not fashion. They are engineering. Feet decide many fates. Karmics are dried by degrees, cold well first, high rack later, regrass daily so damp is nowhere to live near skin. Toes are inspected at halts. Hot spots are padded before they turn into stories. On glare ice days, a dab of fat on webbing keeps cracks from beginning. On deep cold days, a spare insole rides in the parka so a swap can happen before numbness becomes stubborn. A foot warmed late is a foot that will ask for attention for weeks. Warmed early, it forgets to complain. Tools are sterilized by heat and neatness, not ceremony. A knife wiped and briefly passed through flame. Bone needles rinsed in warm water and kept wrapped where soot cannot find them. Cutting boards scraped down to clean snow. Wounds are rinsed with warm, clean meltwater. Bleeding is managed with pressure and tidy bandaging. The injured part is elevated on a rolled parka or a folded fur. Infection is argued with persistence. Fresh dressings, rest near the lamp, hands kept scrupulous. When a cut must close, sinew stitches are placed calmly and kept dry. When it must drain, patience is recruited. Either way, the house adjusts its rhythm so the injured person heals while life proceeds. Teeth are tools. They get tool care. Tough strips are cut thinner to spare molars. A pick of bone cleans. A rinse of warm water after meals keeps mouth and lamp smoke on speaking terms rather than at war. Toothache meets warm compress. Gentler foods, soothed evenings. A cracked tooth is a winter tyrant. Prevention is far cheaper than heroics. Children learn first aid as part of play. A pretend bandage on a doll. A real bandage on a scraped knuckle. A role in holding a paw while a dog's eye speed is eased out. The proud job of carrying the small remedy bundle. Strip of soft skin, bit of sinew, spare mitten cord, from room to room. They learn the sounds of worry and the sounds of all right. They learn not to announce fear into a room unless help is needed, and to fetch elders like fetching warmth. Snow goggles, again, are not just for travellers. Even near the house, on blue days, they prevent the kind of fatigue that makes mistakes. Hoods are trimmed with fur, wolf, wolverine, that resists icing. Lashes stay free. Breath finds a sheltered pocket. Mittens are doubled not to boast but to stage work. Inner mitts stay warm under the parka while outer mitts meet the world. Nothing sits on the lamp so close it sweats. Sweating clothes is as foolish as sweating people in a snow house. Quarantine lives in courtesy. A sick guest is welcomed and seated wisely. A separate cup is theirs. Spoons are scalded. Bedding is changed more often and dried high. Visitors come to the threshold for news and are sent home with food rather than invited to trade coughs. The house's warmth must not become a bridge for illness. Speech carries kindness that keeps pride intact while practices stay firm. Birth and babies have their own circle of competence. Midwives with hands that have learned the tempo of labour and the language of lamplight. A warm corner arranged days ahead. Clean hides ready. Water warmed at intervals, not left to resent the lamp and cool into uselessness. New life is greeted by routine more than by spectacle. Breast, warmth, sleep, quiet. Mother and child rest high on the platform, away from drafts, near advice and near broth. Grief comes in winter, too, and the house makes space without dropping its work. Voices lower. The lamp is tended with extra neatness. Chores are pulled toward the grieving and away from them. Visitors arrive carrying warmth the way others carry bowls. The body's continued routines, sleeping, eating, combing a hood, drying a mitten, a medicine stitched through sorrow. Through all of this, mood is health. Jokes work as poultices for pride. Songs pace breathing. Stories loosen shoulders. A small task completed by a sick person is praised twice, once for usefulness, once for dignity. The house does not let illness become the only weather. It keeps its climate, lamplight, quiet work, careful air, so the person has a place to heal toward. By the time the lamp is trimmed for night. 100 small preventions have added up. Goggles set by the door for tomorrow's glare. Socks already dry. A vent gap the width of 2 fingers. A cup warmed before it's filled. A knife wiped and put back in its bed. A baby's cheek stroked. An elder's cough counted and judged to be less. No grand cures, only continuous competence. The cold remains what it is outside. Inside, people behave like warmth on purpose. Winter writes highways in white, but the north's oldest roads are blue and grey. Water braided through ice, channels that shift their letters with wind and tide. When the year stretches and snow forgets to be a roof, travel changes skins. The sled sleeps. The boat wakes. And just as the igloo uses what winter gives in abundance, snow, the summer craft use what the sea will lend, driftwood. Bone, sinew, and tough, clever skins drawn tight until they sing. The kajak, kayak, is a close-fitting argument with water. Its skeleton, ribs and stringers of driftwood shaped by knife and patience, bends without surrendering. Lashings, never nails, hold joints so they move in storms rather than break. A kajak is more animal than architecture. Over this frame, sealskins are stitched and stretched wet, their seams placed where waves will be polite, their grain reed so the boat sheds water as a seal's back does in rain. When the skin dries, it tightens into a drumhead. The frame hums if you tap it. The cockpit combing rises like a careful lip. And a skirt, skin or laid a canvas, ties the paddler to the boat in a partnership that renders the sea's small insults harmless. Balance is the first lesson and the last. A kajak answers to a hip more than a hand. The paddle, long and narrow, is not for thrashing but for quiet leverage. A blade that enters and leaves water without splash, a cadence that makes distance feel like a form of listening. Bracing strokes are rehearsed by lamplight mind before they are asked of cold water. A capsize becomes a roll, the body following a curved memory back to air, the paddle writing a firm line under the surface for the torso to rise along. Even those who never capsize practice the idea of the roll. because confidence is a kind of flotation, tools rest in tidy reach. A harpoon rides against the foredeck, line flaked in a tray with toggles that know their knots. A throwing board adds the long muscle of the arm to a short dart and sends it straight without drama. A drag or float lies ready to make a struck animal findable in waves that remember how to hide things. A sealskin bailer, a repair kit with sinew and all. A small lamp and tinder sealed against water. These give a paddler many small ways to turn trouble into the next step rather than into a story people will have to fix. The umiak, broad, open, carried by many hands, is summer's houseboat. A mover of families, dogs, goods, and hopes. Its frame is a cousin of the kajak's, driftwood ribs, cross pieces lashed with rawhide, a stem that speaks the language of waves learned the hard way. Over it, many skins stretched and stitched become a hull that flexes over chop instead of shattering into it. Launched bow first from beach or ice edge, the umiak answers a crew more than a captain, paddles on both sides, a steersman with a long or shaping the boat's argument with tide. Children ride against bundled gear, listening to the boat's voice, creaks that mean nothing. Creaks that mean more, the hush of the bow, the slap at the chine when wind behaves like a playful cousin. Seamanship here is reading more than ruling. On glassy mornings, a long, low swell tells you which way the weather is rehearsing. On ruffled afternoons, cat's paws dance dark patches where gusts try their steps before committing. Land offers ranges, 2 rocks that line up to make a safe passage. A notch you steer for to keep hidden shoals off your shoulder. Fog writes a soft wall, and the boat learns to steer by sound. A distant breaker on a bar, a gull colony like white static, a single low boom from a point that carries farther than it should. The kajak's deck sits inches above the world. The umiak's is higher but still humble. Neither assumes the sea will keep promises it did not make, clothing and gear shift with the element. Anoraks shed spray. Sealskin boots meet brine with their old friendship. Gut parkas, translucent, stitched with minute waterproof attention, turn rain into a polite visitor while letting sweat depart. On cold, bright water, snow goggles still do their old service. Glare is glare whether it rises from ice or from chop. A paddler reads their own warmth carefully. Open a tie before sweat argues, cinch at the moment wind thinks about it. Gloves on, then off, then on again. Small, timed negotiations that keep comfort in the black without spending the day's fuel. Boats teach low discipline. Heavy goods lie low and central. Lively goods, dogs, children, are arranged where a glance can persuade them back into logic. Fuel and food are amounts measured by distance and by the simple fact that water sometimes adds miles for its own reasons. In kajak or umiak, spare skins ride folded. Lashings carry a few more turns than you hope to need. And tools sleep in known nests so you never learn the sudden chill of not finding the right thing fast. Hunting from boats has its own grammar. The kajak moves as if it were one more seal at rest, a black dot in a long, even breath between low paddling strokes. The harpoon's cast is short and exact. The toggle's turn is felt through line and forearm and bone. The umiak meets larger quarry with teamwork, paddles shaping position, voices low, the harpooner reading tide and animal, the float ready. A taken animal is brought in without spectacle and with tidy thanks. Blood is washed. Skins are turned grainin against the sun so they cure kindly. Sinew is set aside with the same seriousness as meat. Sea and shore both appreciate order. Safety is made from many small forethoughts. Lines are kept away from ankles. Knives ride where they can be found by feel. A thulpin has its spare already shaved and waiting. In fog, a drum or pot makes the boat audible. In swell, the cruise count keeps blades even. Before a long crossing, boats ride a hand's breadth farther up the skin of readiness, lashing tested. Seam thumbed, a veneer of fresh fat on a worn patch. The sort of extra caution the sea respects enough not to punish. Children grow their sea legs the way they grew their snow legs, by doing. A boy or girl rides the umiak's bow and learns to watch water for what it will be, not what it is right now. A child in a kajak-shaped trainer, a short frame skin tight, practices quiet paddling near shore, learns to wet exit without excitement, learns that the boat returns if you do not fight it. Fish are pulled in by small hands into a wide smile of a net. Nets are mended by those same hands later, sinew looping rhythm into patience. Pride here is a tool, not a trophy. You did that well. Do it again tomorrow. Boats sleep like sleds do, maintained. Hauled above tide, they bask in wind that keeps hides from sulking. Lashings are rinsed of salt and oiled. Seams are red like familiar scars. Worn skins are replaced whole, not patched into a future grievance. The kajak's paddle is oiled and hung where sun cannot warp it. The umiak's ribs are counted and heard one by one with the ear of someone who knows the boat's voice in fair weather and in gale. Near the camp, racks for fish and meat rise. Farther back, caches in turf and snow wait. The shore turns into a small harbour of competence. Boats, racks, lines, children playing with an old float like a drum. Trade travels by water, too. A loaded umiak becomes a bridge between places. Visiting cousins, joining neighbours who will share a hunt or a story, bringing tools, taking hides, exchanging news of wind and animals. Courtesy at sea repeats courtesy on snow. Give way early. Make your intentions plain. Land where your keel leaves no wound. Enter a camp with your paddle down and your greeting up. Guests are offered the same tidy bowls, the same lamplight. The same sure kindness a winter door offers, only now the door is a strip of beach and the lamp may be a cooking flame under open sky. Storm lessons travel with the boats. When wind backs and then veers, it writes hazards where yesterday had none. When sky stacks low and fast, you count the time between whitecaps and choose your harbour accordingly. When fog eats sound until even the gulls whisper, paddles counter steady while the boat's bow finds the known stone by memory. A kajak and umiak both are honest partners. They do exactly what they were built to do. People keep their part by never asking for miracles when competence will do. Evenings ashore, the boats lean like big, friendly fish. The camp's weather becomes social again. Tent doors open toward one another. Children run between racks. Dogs find their place in the shadow of a turned hull. The drum returns, this time with water as audience. Songs pick up a slower swell. Work ends with the same gestures as winter. Tools clean and put away, lines coiled, skins brushed and fed, lamp trim smaller. Sleep under thin skin is as good as sleep under snow when the air is kind and the day's miles add their heaviness to the eyes. Tomorrow might be river calm or ocean mischief. A portage that turns paddlers into haulers. A landing that asks for patience while surf rehearses its old joke of pushing back. The same rules solve it. Read first, move next, mend nightly, share always. Water, like snow, respects people who do not waste. The kajak's low whisper, the umiak's steady encouragement. These are summer's versions of the sled runner song. Between seasons, only the medium changes. The mentality, the humility, the precision, the generosity remains the same, and because it does, the road, whether white or blue, keeps agreeing to carry people where they need to go. North of most cartographers, maps live in people. The shoreline has no printed grid. The ice changes its mind. Fog edits landmarks without asking. So Inuit wayfinding is not a stack of papers. It's a chorus of memories, place names that each carry a short story, piles of stone that point like verbs, star habits that travel with you, and a discipline of noticing that turns travel into familiarity rather than risk. Place names are not labels. They are instructions. A bay might be where the river hesitates, which tells you there's a shoal and a slack before an outflow rips. A point might be the seal lies here when wind is east, which is a calendar and a compass braided together. Children learn these names the way they learn kin, repeated in order, sung softly on long walks, spoken with a finger's line across horizon features. A recitation is not poetry for its own sake. It's a turn-by-turn that folds weather and animals into geography. On land and ice, inuksut, stone markers, act like quiet punctuation. Upright set in pairs become a sight line that, when aligned, keeps you clear of a reef or brings you to a pass. A windowed can frames a distant hill you must center to find a safe river crossing. Each inuksak is useful, not grand, placed where it won't fool you from the wrong direction. Built so winter can't bully it flat, subtly different from its neighbors so the mind remembers. This is the one that speaks about the shallow bar. They're not decorations. They're footnotes from elders to anyone with eyes. Sea and sky publish their own books. Swells run long under the weather's fuss, if your kajak or umiak rides an old. Even heave from the west while wind and chop shout from the north. You remember that the real story is still being written by a distant storm. Cat's paws, dark freckles where gusts try out their claws, tell you where the wind is rehearsing. Tide sings under certain cliffs like a drum with a palm on it. Slack arrives and you learn the road is open for an hour, then isn't. Fog takes sound and squeezes it. You count strokes between an echo and the next, steering by time distances instead of shapes. Stars are not just for night poetry. Kringate, constellations, hold bearings across a slow season of dusk and dawn. Polaris sits where north breathes, but the families of stars carry fine advice, a line from shoulder to foot. A curve that marks the way a channel opens between two islands. A rising point that, when it clips the low cloud, says the night has turned. Winter also has star scarcity. In long twilight, you fall back on land clues, wind text. And the way Sestrugi remember the big winds like paragraphs frozen mid-sentence. Memory here is a tool with parts, a root story, from the seal-shaped rock. Travel until the far headland looks like a sleeping dog. When the dog's nose touches the low island, turn. A tide song, hum length for how long the current will be friendly, 2 verses for the crossing, 3 for caution. A list you can run when anxious, gloves, probe, spare lashings, lamp, tinder, needle, float, spoken as you move, so hands and mind keep lockstep. Teaching is layered like clothing. First, children ride and listen, the names, the jokes, the small errors corrected without scold. Then they point and say the names back while someone gently swivels their chin to the right landmark. Then they lead on easy legs of a journey, with an elder dragging the brake of the sled or the paddle just enough to give thinking time. Tests are kind. Find us the Inuksuck that shows the shallow. Tell me when the tide will wait. Choose the line that keeps dogs off glare ice. Wrong. Answers bring a second pass and a story. About the time an uncle did the same and how everyone got home. Anyway, safety looks like superstition from far away but is just discipline dressed in story. Do not point at a lead with your whole arm makes you step closer and read it, not command it from afar. Do not boast about distance keeps fuel and food honest. Feed dogs first aligns the village with tomorrow. The sea and ice answer these courtesies with a little mercy. Neighbors extend the map. At a meeting on the ice or a shore that feels like a living room, you trade fresh edits. A new crack behind the island, a pollinia that has grown teeth, a drift that now hides a soft spot. People speak in usable units, 2 songs of paddling, a tease time of sledding, the length of a story about the boy who. These are clocks anyone can carry without crystal or spring, and they keep anxiety from taking the lead. Travel also has a mood map. If you feel rushed, you recite the safety list aloud until breath slows. If dogs fidget, you shorten line and hand them easier choices. If fog prints worry on faces, someone tells a practical tale, how a family once waited an hour for tide, then crossed laughing because crossing calm is nearly always cheaper than crossing fast. A good navigator directs people whether as carefully as boat or sled. Place names stretch into genealogy. Your namesake first count here. Grandmother's brother broke a runner on that ridge and lashed it with seal rib. These are not boasts. They are installations of memory, anchors for future choices. When the land is mostly white and the sea mostly change, stories are pegs you can tie decisions to. New tools arrive. Paper maps, compasses, later radios, and GPS. They are welcomed as guests, not as elders. A compass keeps you honest in fog. A chart reminds you of rock that hasn't shown its back in years. A radio carries help faster than feet if feet fail. But the base layer, the mind map, still matters, because batteries forget and the horizon never does. At T-day's end, the best navigation feels ordinary. You arrive not because you beat the land, but because you agreed with it, wind-used, tide-timed. Dogs and paddlers asked for exactly what they could give. Decisions small and early, so none needed to be large and late. The tunnel's low mouth appears. The tent door opens. The sod house grins its small window. The map folds back into hearts and talk. Someone names tomorrow's wind. Someone sets a stone in the right place. A child repeats 3 headlands in order, proud and sleepy. The house keeps its weather. The world keeps its weather. Between them, people walk the narrow, generous path called home. In a country short on trees and long on weather, clothing and shelter are made from patience as much as from animals. What the sea and tundra give, hide, fat, sinew, gut, becomes architecture you can wear, a tent you can fold, a boat that sheds water like a living thing. The workshop is not a barn with benches. It's a circle of lamplight and steady hands, the snow platform pulled into service as a clean table, the wall itself a shelf. Here, winter comfort is stitched into being one quiet seam at a time. Hide work begins with neatness and speed. Fresh skin is laid hair down on clean snow or an upturned sled, scraped with an igloo's even curve until the cling of fat gives way to the faint nap that means the hide will accept its next instructions. Sealskins carry brine and must be rinsed in cold, honest water. Caribou hides hold the gift of hollow hair and must be handled so those hairs keep their airy rooms intact. Every handful of scrap goes into a plan. Fat rendered for lamp and leather. Sinew dried for thread. Trimmed hair kept for padding. Waste is not just impolite. It is inefficient in a landscape where calories are also heat. Tanning is not a single recipe, it's many local grammars. Some hides are air-dried and worked soft under the hands, pulled over a beam, flexed until they forget to be stiff. Others are fat-fed, oils worked into fibers with the slow persuasion of warm fingers and a rhythm that makes a day pass. Smoke is a teacher in some places and seasons, lending its preservative and a color that speaks of weatherproofing done right. The test is simple and stern. Does the hide behave when asked? Will it fold without cracking, bend without sulking, stretch and return? If yes, it is ready for the next life. Boot, belt, line, roof, boat, sinew is thread with memory. Split from caribou backstraps or leg tendons, it dries into ivory-colored ribbons that later separate into silky fibers. Moistened and rolled, each strand twists into a line that shrinks tight in a seam, sealing holes, marrying pieces as if they had always been one. The sinew ball sits in a small skin cup by the lamp with a dab of fat. The sewer draws a length, strokes it smooth, and begins. A needle of bone or iron passes through hide that was softened in the mouth's warm breath a heartbeat before. Stitches are laid like the lamp's flame, steady, modest, without smoke. A good seam is felt, not seen. Parka's a sculpture with rules. Caribou fur has its own cartography. Back pieces for warmth, belly for flexibility, leg fur for trim that can take abrasion. Inner parka furin, gentle against skin. Outer parka furat, glossy to shrug snow and wind. Hoods are houses for faces, rimmed with fur that resists icing. Wolf and wolverine favored for the way frost refuses to cling. Shoulders are cut to lift without binding. Sleeves to meet mittens without leaving a draft's small moustache at the wrist. Seams avoid gutters where meltwater might settle, and toggles close with logic you can obey blind in a blow. Push, turn, tie, done. Boots, karmic, are a small thesis on materials. Uppers might be ringed sealskin, tough and gracious in wet. Soles might be bearded seal or caribou legskin, each chosen for the day's argument with ice. Uppers are sewn with stitches that lie low and smooth so ropes and snow cannot find trouble. Ankle ties answer to the foot's swelling and shrinking over a long trip. Inside lives the genius of dried grass. Clean, combed, a dry meadow underfoot that wicks damp away and can be shaken out, fluffed, replaced. At day's end, grass breathes. By the lamp, boots rest by the cold well first, then migrate higher to finish. Oil feeds the grain. Shapes are coaxed back over a last so tomorrow's fit is honest. Gut parkas, translucent rainproof marvels stitched from cleaned, inflated, dried intestines, turn bad weather into mere water. Strips are slit, opened, and overlap like shingles, edges laid to shed, seams whipped with fine sinew that disappears into the membrane. When worn over fur, a gut parka keeps snow and spray out while letting sweat leave, a breathable shell centuries old. The sight of lamp light through a gut coat is its own pale beauty, practical and delicate at once, the way ice itself can be. Sewing is also navigation of breath. In the igloo, the lamp becomes a metronome. Stitch, draw, comb the wick, stitch. A parka panel lies across the knees like a sleeping child. The sewer's posture answers the room's climate, lower when the vent admits more air, closer to the lamp when the bowl's oil goes low. Clean is warmer. The floor is kept swept of hair and scraps. Needles return to their rapi first. The sinew bag is covered so soot and stray sparks cannot teach it bad habits. Pattern memory lives in hands and in cut pieces that travel from house to house's templates, a shoulder curve that never chafes, a hood gauze arrangement that frames a face, a boot tongue that does not fold into an ache after 3 miles. Elders carry these maps. Learners trace them, cut, stitch, rip, and re-stitch until the piece behaves. There are debates, 2-stitch or 3 near a stress point. This hide for that weather, a different edge treatment for a child who forgets to lift their feet in drifted snow. These debates are weatherproofing by other means. Repair is sacred and casual at once. A nick in a parka from a hook? Grease the thread, lay a short, tight ladder of stitches, rub the seam until it lies, comb the guard hairs so water keeps its manners. A boot seam whispering open? Catch it in lamplight now. Tomorrow is for miles, not excuses. A gut coat with a pinhole glittering near the shoulder? A dot of fat, a breath, a kiss of warm bone to press it closed. The rule is always sooner, before. Little things become the kind of stories that chill a room. Tools for sewing carry their own etiquette. Inuit sharpened just enough to part fibers, not to slice threads out of a future seam. Awls polished smooth for easy persuasion. Thimbles, leather, bone, protect palms against long evenings. A small whetstone warmed near the lamp so edges don't chip under cold's brittle mood. Everything has a place, and the place respects the lamp's circle. Sharp out of reach of haste, soft within it, ornament exists, but even ornament is useful. Tablet woven bands from trade days, beads at hems to help fabric hang and shed powder. Patterned seams that reinforce the places snow is most tempted to cling. A child's parka might carry a namesake mark, a small motif that says you belong to this set of stories. Beauty here isn't extra. It's a way of making a garment loved enough to be cared for, and care is the best waterproofing known. Division of craft has its rhythms without borders. Women's hands often govern lamps and clothing. Men's hands often shape harpoons and sleds, but skills are shared wherever cold is rude. A man stitches a seam neatly or goes without mittens. A woman scrapes a hide or goes without boots. Children cross these lines early with pride. A boy mends his own karmic tie. A girl plains a sled thong. Both are applauded for competence, not for trespass. The weather cares nothing for theory. It rewards capability. Trade adds layers without removing wisdom. Wool knits slip under fur. Iron needles outlive bone. Canvas sacks haul fish and must be dried the day they're used or they learn mold. Nylon line is tentative in cold. Where it behaves, it earns a limited citizenship. Even with new things. The old rule applies. Keep what can be mended, respect what can be trusted, decline what is fussy or fails without warning. Teaching is granular and generous. A child starts with sinew splitting, learns to read a thread's good temper by feel, graduates to a mitten patch, the seam inspected by an elder's thimble thumb, then a boot gusset, then a hood, then, eventually, a parka where the household will bet winter comfort on their hands. Mistakes are not shamed, they are unpicked. Unpicking is a teacher few forget. Even in summer, sewing continues. Tents and boats need the same logic. A skin roof's seam lies under a ridgepole where rain cannot nose in, and umiak's lashings. Get a nurse's rounds after each trip. A kajak skirt is checked where the combing rubs. Seasons do not stop the needle. They only change the color of the thread day to night. The workshop puts itself away. The sinew sleeps covered. The igloos lean clean. The hides fold hair to hair with a bit of oil between. The lamp flame lowers to a bead. The house's breath slows. Somewhere on a peg, a finished park awaits, the hood rim bright with frost-resistant fur, the seams so tidy you can't find them until you need them. Tomorrow's weather will come without theatre. The house will answer without theatre. Warmth will not roar. It will fit, a garment with good manners, a seam that never leaks, a boot that remembers your foot like a friend. All of this is survival written in fine print, the kind you don't notice until it saves you. A lamp's tidy wick, a thread's honest shrink, a stitch's angle, a hood's curve, a seam's position. They add up to a room that stays human in inhuman weather. When the tunnel lifts and the world presses in its cold, people step out dressed in a conclusion that began months ago beside a small stone sun. A snow house is warm because of a lamp. A village is warm because of doors. Across the north, survival is a neighborhood project, written in visits that arrive without fanfare, in gifts that look like errands, in rules that are so ordinary you only notice them when someone forgets. The land is large. The houses are small. The distance between them is crossed by sled runners, by footsteps in packed blue light, and by a culture of hospitality that treats warmth like a current that must keep moving. Arrival has a shape. A traveller taps the tunnel lid, not loudly, just enough to give the house a moment to tidy its air. No one peers at packs. A greeting comes first, and then the invitation that matters most in places where fuel is dear. Come sit. Warm yourself. A bowl appears, warmed before it's filled so it gives heat instead of stealing it. Wet edges find the right place by the door. Snow falls from hems in a zone the floor already forgives. If the house is busy, lamp trimming, meat cutting, a baby at the practical age, conversation joins that rhythm instead of competing with it. Gifting is the village's slow circulation. A seal shares itself through many doors. A string of fish is eaten here and there until the story of the catch is the only part that returns to the hunter hole. Gifts travel dressed as chores. A length of sinew for a neighbor who will stitch boots tonight. A jar of oil for a lamp that must run steady through an elder's cough. A bedded tool slipped back onto a peg where its owner will find it with a small shock of relief. The giver keeps their palms unpolished with talk. The receiver lets the gift pass into ordinary use at once, which is the most sincere way to say thank you. Under this traffic runs a ledger without ink. Debt here is not a chain. It is a braid. They fed our dogs after that long day on glare ice. We will share the first fish that runs under the river ice. She mended my hood when my eyes were sore with light. I will sharpen her boy skates when the clear cold returns. The record is kept by attention, not by numbers. And it clears itself through the seasons. Seal into fish into berries into meat into help lifting a boat. A person conspicuous for never letting warmth leave their house learns, gently, wide doors of latches, not to lock out strangers, but to let generosity breathe. Etiquette keeps stories sweet. Don't count another's stores with your eyes. Don't carry gossip like a spark in a dry house. When saying a hard thing, your line wants readying. Your boy cut the ice too thin with his steps. Wrap it in a calm, detail-rich story that invites change rather than defense. Jesting corrects where lectures would bruise. A playful drum song about a hunter who always forgets to soften his feet becomes a tune that makes him remember without shame. Children learn these instruments by osmosis. A sharp joke that draws breath in the wrong way is repaired immediately by a softer one that lands right. Law appears when frost makes tempers brittle. Sometimes the village meets, inside a big house, under soft, shared light, and lets speech do the careful work of keeping neighbors possible. The question is rarely guilt. It is almost always proportion. A damaged sled. What exchange returns balance? A cache disturbed. What apology repairs trust? Elders speak by telling the last time this happened, how it was settled, what was learned. No one wastes breath on spectacle. Breath is fuel. Verdicts are small and early by design, so big and late ones are rarely needed. Taboos are practical dress in myth's clothes. Don't foul water where people must drink. Everyone's lamp depends on clean snow and clean melt. Don't boast about distance or cold conquered. Boasting invites weather to test, and tests draft food from many bowls. Don't tease animals pointlessly. Respect is part of hunting, and meat tastes different when it's accompanied by manners. Stories enforce these without scolding. The hunter whose lamp smoked after he spoke too proudly. The family who learned to share again when a seal refused their house until they did trade stitches coasts to rivers and families to cousins far off. A kajak's deck might carry needles from a distant post, a roll of cloth, a kettle dented from many sleds. Back it carries hides cut to shape, maps spoken en route, news of ice that matters 80 miles away. Prices are not just weights and measures. They are timing. A roll of sinew is worth more the night before the weather turns. Lamp wicks are cheap when everyone's seal luck has been good. Fairness is the law you can smell in a camp. Calm voices. Work still happening while visiting does. Dogs fed before talk deepens. Departures that leave no mess for the host to discover. Games and contests keep hands quick and pride smooth. A harpoon throw at a set distance. A dog-sled dash on a day the snow is hard and blue. A song contest where improvised verses braid kindness and correction. Each event is a social whetstone. The winner receives laughter and a good story. The village receives useful practice. Lines thrown true. Teams that break cleanly and stop cleanly. Tongues that can praise and tease without cutting. Sometimes, when hardship has lately been heavy, a small festival is permission to be more than enduring creatures. A day to be joyful animals under large sky. Guests expand the house to the size of a community. A traveling family is welcomed into the circle with the same rules. Warm first, feed soon, learn names properly. Names matter. A namesake guest is greeted as the elder whose name they carry. The room adjusts its pronouns and its posture. Children watch the quick difference respect makes and understand that identity here is partly relational craft. How we address each other builds warmth as surely as lamps do. Danger and rescue finalize the contract. When someone's dogs return with an empty sled trace or the wind writes a message of trouble on the horizon, visit stop and search begins. A lamp, a rope, a spare parka. A line of people moving like a thoughtful animal across bad weather. No one counts the cost while the cost is needed. Later, after soup, after sleep, the ledger quietly rebalances. A seal in the doorway. A mended runner left against a wall. A drum song that tells the story with the edges sanded so only the lessons remain sharp to the daily scale. Community looks like shared small work. Two houses swap tasks for an hour so each can rest one muscle. Teens are sent to fetch water together so they learn roots and each other. An elder sits near a doorway and becomes the villagers where the station and memory in one body. The wind will back soon. Bring the mittens in higher on the rack. The village breathes like lungs. Doors open. Air mixes. Doors close. Warmth conserved before sleep. A village feels like one long, low room stitched by snow paths. Lamps lower. Dogs shiver and are still. Someone in each house trims a wick, touches a hood to check it's dry, sets a bowl where a morning visitor will meet it without thought. In the ledger without ink, a line is drawn and balanced. Nothing owed noisily, plenty owed quietly, all of it understood to move again tomorrow. The door is set on its latch, not shut against the world, but tuned to open correctly. Inside, stories finish where they began, in a warmth made not by a grand blaze, but by many small, shared fires. Some days the north writes careful letters across the horizon. Some days it simply erases. A blizzard is not just wind and snow. It's a decision the world makes to become one thing, everywhere, at once. In those hours, survival is less about heroics than about posture. How the house stands, how the family breathes, how the village uses patience like a tool. The rules are old and plain. Strengthen early. Shorten all journeys. Keep signals honest. Make the rooms weather better than the outdoor kind. And let time pass without spending more heat than necessary. The forecast you feel the best storm craft begins when the sky is still arguing, not when it has won. Wind backs, sly shift through points that means change, and then veers with a sharper mood. Cloud comes low and fast, bottoms torn, edges moving in ranks. Snow that was polite becomes sandpaper. Sastrugi lose their definition, as if the land forgot which way is up. Smoke from the roof vent leans hard and does not return to plumb. Dogs grow succinct, fewer looks, noses tuck sooner. That is the hour for preparation, not for one last errand. Shortening the world paths are revised to circles you can finish. Water run. Two-house loop, not the stream. Visit. A shouted question at a neighbor's lid, not a cup by their lamp. Sleds are pulled close. Lines are flaked where a hand can find them by touch alone. A snowhook is set in packed ground within arm's reach of the door so a traveler who arrives blind can make their sled stay put while they find breath and bearings, reinforcing the house. The igloo is already a storm answer, but it appreciates small improvements. A low wind wall, a crescent of blocks placed upwind, breaks the gust's stride without loading the dome. Drifts are invited to form where they help, not where they threaten. A brush of snow along the base seals pinholes. A tidy scoop cut away from the roof Eve denies the wind a lip to pry. The door tunnel gets a second manners lesson. An inner block set for quick sliding. A skin curtain checked and retied. A small handspan vent left at the far end so the house does not suffocate when the outer block must stay in place. Inside, seams are skimmed with a panner. High spots shaved so melt won't drip in startled beads. Shallow grooves traced to teach any condensation to run toward the cold well, not toward bedding. The sleeping platform is brushed clean. Furs are fluffed. The rack is cleared so wet mittens can climb higher where heat is true but not fierce. The kulak becomes conductor again, wick trimmed to a clean blue edge. Flames strengthened a breath for the first onslaught. Then set back to steady once the room proves it can keep its promise. White oat rules outside, distance dies. Inside, distance must be invented. Rope stage little journeys, a short line from door to sled. Another from door to a latrine curtain set downwind. In bigger camps, a lifeline between houses where vital visits can't be skipped. Elders' medicine, a shared water pot. Knots face the same way on every segment so frozen fingers can read by feel. People move counting steps, speaking their count out loud so the mind stays clipped to the body that if someone must go, they do not go alone. They carry a lamped cup to warm their throat and judgment on return. They carry a spare mitten inside the parka to rescue a wet one. They carry a probe because drift over a cut can lie. The rule that saves is short tasks, done or aborted before numbness begins to compose its lies, signaling and sound in white that eats sight, houses still speak. A drum set beside the door gives 3 easy beats every few minutes. A pot rung with a bone stick answers from the next house over. Not alarm, just position, a village echolocation. Dogs make their own beacons, small, regular howls that say we are and help a latecomer draw a straight line between known voices. Indoors, sound is engineered softer so outdoor signals can be heard. Tools set down, not dropped. Stories told close to faces. Children shown the game of who can be quietest with prizes that are truly prizes. First sip, warm seat, a story choice later, fuel and dryness storm days can tempt flame to overperform. The lamp is praised for being enough. Too much heat births wet walls and sulky gear. Instead, warmth is rotated. People take turns near the domed shoulder where air is kindest. Mittens ascend and descend the rack like slow birds. Boots dry in 2 stages, cold well, then high, so leather forgets ice without learning steam. Food respects the lamp's pace, broths that simmer without argument, fat added in measured spoons that turn a small meal into a long one. Work that fits storms there is a class of chores that were made for blizzards. Splicing a dog trace. Dressing sinew. Shaving a clean bevel on panna and doulou. Trimming a gut seam with hairfine stitches. Teaching a child the 2 toggles that make a hood honest in a gale. Stories that correct travel mistakes are scheduled here, too, because no one is at the door to contradict them with a call to sleds. The house becomes school and workshop, the storm only a percussion section outside, mood as medicine whiteouts press on tempers. The remedy is structure with softness. Morning, lamp, light chores, warm drink. Midday, shared work in the lamp circle, a song with drum no louder than a heart. Afternoon, something sweet if the pantry agrees, a berry saved in oil, a joke told by a good mimic, a child's show and tell of clever stitches. Evening, early. Sleep is allowed to arrive like a guest who didn't knock. Elders get the last word, often a small. Funny cautionary tale that lets the room drop its shoulders without dropping its guard, but if the house must travel sometimes the world decides that the best house is somewhere else. Pressure ridge moving. Crack complaining through the night. Coastal blizzard piling snow against the dome faster than shovels can teach it manners. Then the plan is practiced, not invented. Gear is already in bundles that know their order. Lamp kit, sewing kit, food, children's things, dog rations. The sled is brought to the door while there is still horizon. Blocks are knocked inward and stacked to use again at the next pitch. A short wall is left as a windbreak for whoever passes. Movement is short, certain, rehearsed. New house rises in a calm clearing made by the team's bodies, not by bravado after the hush storms end slyly. The drumbeat between houses becomes spaced and then stops. Dogs stand and stretch a note. The vent's thread of steam stands vertical for a breath and then wanders. The door lifts. The world returns in layers. A near bench, a farther dog line, a horizon with edges again. First outside chores are ceremonial and practical at once. Thank the wall by straightening it. Read the yard for what moved that shouldn't. Check the lifeline knots you tied. Leave the drum dry and ready for next time. Then, only then. The long errand resumes. Water, wood, hunt, visit, each started with the unexcited confidence that comes from having not wasted yourself on the weather's performance. The lesson that stays Blizzard craft is not about winning. It's about fitting, house to wind, flame to air, tasks to day, people to each other. In towns with streets and in camps with paths stamped blue, the meaning is the same. Strengthen early, shorten wisely, keep your signals, share your patience. When night falls after such a day, the room feels seasoned, not spent. The lamp's flame is small again, just right. The rack holds dry mittens like a row of quiet birds. The sleeping platform is tidy. A child can point to the rope and explain what it's for. Outside, the old white silence resets. Inside, people have kept a better weather, one they made together. Winter at the top of the world is not a battle. It's a conversation answered with competence. An igloo rises from wind-packed snow and becomes a room with its own weather. A kulak turns fat into light, warmth, and food, trimmed as precisely as a thought. Clothes behave like architecture, air held still in tiny rooms of fur, boots that wick damp into quiet grass. Dogs translate horizon into motion, and tools, mended nightly, keep their promises. Food moves through houses, not just into them. Doors are valves for warmth and kindness. Law is proportion. Stories are manuals disguised as comfort. When light returns, the city under snow melts without scars. What remains is the real wealth. Skill that travels, names that remember roots, a calm way of handling flame and cold so decisions stay small and early. Next winter will come. People will be ready, not with spectacle, but with the 1,000 quiet choices that make a house human in inhuman weather. You don't defeat winter. You befriend it, one trimmed wick, one clean seam, one shared bowl at a time.